Hey, everybody, if you want to skip right to the interview, skip to 9 minutes. All right, welcome, everybody. Episode number 38 of the podcast with Dani and Eytan Kollin. I'm very excited to have these authors on. These two brothers, they wrote some of my favorite books of all time, the Unincorporated series. As you'll hear in this interview, this was one that I was very excited to get on. I kind of reached out to them expecting to hear a no, kind of one of the bigger swings I took after, it was actually recording the first episode in person in the studio in Edmonton with Brendan's help that really set me on this journey. I was feeling really high on myself that, I was moving the right direction. Good things are happening on the podcast. And that gave me the motivation or the confidence to ask these brothers to come on. And they were so gracious and every step of the way, they just made me feel comfortable, which didn't help me from freaking out over it. And honestly, the day I recorded this episode was quite the rough day. Everything that could go wrong went wrong that day at work and over the last couple of days before the interview. And I felt quite overwhelmed and I was worried I was going to blow it. And I was just very nervous about it. And it all kind of came together. But, everyone in my life was good at helping support me and make sure that everything I needed on that day was provided to me, and it was so beautiful. And I was able to, meditate before and kind of reset myself. And I'm really proud of the interview that I was able to provide. This was one of those episodes where the books that these brothers have written are so impactful to me, and I feel like I was able to offer an interview that no other person in the world probably could have. And I think I can do that for a lot of people, and I think I just need to start proving that. And when somebody like these guys give me a shot to prove it, I need to grab that and kind of run with it. And I think I did. I think if you haven't read the books, it might be a little bit less of an interesting podcast compared to some of the others. But I think even still, just to, dive into the mind of a writer is a cool experience. And then also to see tandem writers that write together, and you'll get to see, Eytan definitely is a lot more of the world building and some of the storylining and that, and then Donnie, his dialogue and both of them. And I mean, it's very easy to kind of segment it like that. I know they both do a bit of both and they feed off each other, but then also to add on to that, a brotherly love, brotherly competition relationship on top of that in working together. It was so cool. And you get to see it a lot on this podcast, kind of their relationship. I loved it. It was so cool for me to watch, and you can see reflections of their relationships in the books and in the relationships between characters, and just these guys are amazing. I can't recommend these books enough. And actually an idea I heard of on Rolf Potts. If you want a good travel podcast, Rolf Potts is always very good. He talks about when he has authors on, he offers if anybody sends him an email, he sends them a copy of the books they talked about. So if anybody listens to this episode and really likes it and wants a copy of the Unincorporated Man, just send me an email, VonDubCast at gmail.com, I believe. And or message me on Instagram, whatever it is. I'll send you a copy of this because I think these books are just so special. I think everyone should read them, especially the first one. I mean, once you read the first one, I dare you not to read the next three. It's going to be impossible. It's just so well written, and the science is so spot on, and the dialogue, the character arcs, just honestly one of the most amazing series I've ever read. And actually, they won the Prometheus Award for best sci-fi, whatever the Prometheus Award. They won it for the Unincorporated Man, and then a couple of the other books were actually nominated as well. I think the final book in the series was a finalist, but the caliber of writing that these guys are throwing out. It's not, this isn't your child's play. This isn't your, I don't know. I don't want to throw any of my favorite authors under the bus here. But it's definitely some big boy writing, and it's big boy themes, and, the overtones, and I talked about it a little bit in the interview. You'll hear it, but in reading them in my early 20s compared to just the last reread I gave them the last couple of weeks, because once they said yes, I was like, oh shit, I would love to reread them. So I read all four of the Unincorporated books and their new book of short stories, which is now being turned into a serialized podcast, as you hear we discuss it on here, in a week and a half. Like, it was some speed listening. I definitely cheated, and the four Unincorporated books I listened to on 3 times speed, and it was just so cool with now this new understanding of religion and a lot of other themes, and just war and values, and sticking by them, and when it is okay to bend and break them and when it isn't. It was just so cool to re-experience these books with a more life skills and life experience now, it was almost like a whole different set of books. So I had so much fun enjoying that. And then to be able to live out my dream, I always dreamed when I'd read these books like Harry Potter and, the Twilight even, and Aragon and all these books. I just had so many questions, and I would think so deeply about the worlds that they create. And I would always be just, if I ever, I would sit there and daydream if I ever got to meet these authors and what I would ask them. And now I get to live out that dream, and it was just so cool. And I can't wait to do it more and expand on it and really show my passion for a lot of these things and just how deeply I do enjoy them and that sort of thing. So yeah, I hope you guys really enjoy this episode. It was so much fun to record. Yeah. What else? Yeah, no, I think that's pretty much it. I hope you guys enjoy it. If you could follow my social medias for the podcast, VonDubCast, and I think it's dub_Von on Twitter because it just defaulted. It's not what I picked, but it created the account and I wasn't going to go remake it. But yeah, that's a big help. The YouTube channel, if you could go subscribe to there, we're at about, I think, 30 subscribers now. So that's growing strong. And I think some people are really enjoying being able to watch some of these episodes. I'm not sure how quickly we'll, I think we did record the video for this podcast. It was an online one since they're down in California, but we might be able to get that up on YouTube as well. Hopefully have some more solo episodes coming in the future. Have a couple really fun podcasts banked after this one. And then on top of that, I guess just I hope everyone had a happy Hanukkah, and I hope everyone is able to enjoy their Christmas upcoming in whatever new way that's possible. I know it's tough being away, and probably some traditions that you've had in the past are going to have to take a back seat, and that's unfortunate, but just try and stay positive and keep things framed as best as you can. And, yeah, I know it's tough, but it all goes back to framing. And even if something, there isn't a lot of silver lining to find, you really got to pull out your microscope and really bear down on that and try and focus on the positives that you can get, because that's the only thing that you can control. And if you just focus on the things that are happening to you, and play the victim, you're not going to go as far as if you can just find those little things, how minuscule they may be, of what you can control, and just really try to frame things in that respect. And you'll probably get through this holiday season. That's probably going to be tough for a lot of people in a bit more of a better way. So, yeah, other than that, I hope you guys enjoy. I enjoyed this so much, even if nobody likes this interview. Because they don't know the books, I had so much fun living out my dream, talking to these people I really look up to. Thank you again to the brothers for giving me a chance. Check out their books. Contact me if you want to order them. And once you do read them, please reach out. I would love, as you can see, I could have talked to them for 9 hours on these books. So if anybody else wants to read them and then, give me a call and have a bullshit for a couple hours about them and all the themes, I'm so down for that. And I hope to bring you guys into my world on some of these other books that I've really enjoyed, and hopefully get some authors on to, bring you guys on board and show you the depths of what books can offer. And I think some people just think, no, I'm not a reading person, but with audiobooks and that, there's a lot less barriers to it than there has been in the past. And with the popularity gaining, they're getting better people reading these audiobooks, and they're stepping up their game, and it's all just coming together. So yeah, other than that, I hope you guys have a great Christmas, and I hope you had a happy Hanukkah, and enjoy the interview, and I'll see you in the outro? Yeah, that's what it's called. Jeez, can't even remember the word of the outro. Anywho, see you guys. All right. Well, thank you guys for being here. This is a very exciting episode for me. One of my biggest goals was to have on some of my favorite authors, and there's not much higher on that totem pole than you guys. The Unincorporated Man was one of my favorite books I'd ever read. It really influenced a lot of my thoughts just on technology and society moving forward. And I thought I had a pretty good handle on the series, but then in getting this opportunity with you guys, I gave it a rereading, and it was so interesting to see, with a few more years under my belt, how much different the whole story was and how much more themes kind of popped up there. And it was just such an interesting. There
were a lot of hidden things in there.
Oh yeah. It was amazing. And it was kind of a cool experience, because when I had first started reading, there was only, I think, the first 2 books out. So I definitely read those. And then when the third book came out, I read through the whole thing. And then when the fourth book came out, I read through the whole thing. So
so you were one of those people that got screwed by the end of book 2, and book 3 doesn't come out for another 3 years.
Yep, that was one of those ones. But I was just so thankful that it wasn't a Game of Thrones 9-year waiting period. I think after that, it's so painful, but it's also really nice to have that as kind of the high watermark for wait time. So now any other author just has a nice easy coast because 3 years, 4 years, that's peanuts now.
I know. I would love to be like 100 millionaire like Mr. Martin and have to, 10, 12, 15 years for my next book. Like that would be awesome.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
Not to speak badly, but I'm sure he's got his reasons. And I'm sure they're valid. I'm sure I should have sat down. I'd regret what I'm about to say, but dude, your fans made you incredibly rich and secure and popular as a cultural icon pretty much for at least the next century or two. Finish the damn books.
Yeah.
It's your goddamn job.
Oh, that's funny.
We might have to have you strike that from the record so that we don't lose all his fans when they hear the recording.
Hey, no problem. No problem.
I'm pretty sure most of his fans at this point will agree with me.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. A little bit of salt.
And I say this fully expecting to have to remove it and take it back and recant when I hear the reason why he hasn't done it. And it'll be a really valid reason. I'll feel like a complete a-hole for having said it. But until I hear that really valid reason, come on, dude.
Yeah. So I guess just before we get into any of the nitty gritty of the books, I kind of want to just be.
By the way, save this for if my brother and I ever do become really successful, and we don't put out a book for 5 or 6 years. You can just play this clip back to us and go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'll be the one knocking on your door, asking to see the advanced drafts. I'll be that guy. But I was very curious. Have you guys? Where did writing start with you guys? Were you always writers, or was and also was The Unincorporated Man the first book that you guys wrote together?
Yes.
Yeah, and was that something that was that something that you guys had always wanted to do, or was it kind of a spur of the moment?
Not in the least.
Oh, really?
Mm-mm.
So what changed
that made each other for a really long time?
Wow. And look at you guys now. Look at the magic that happened when you came together.
I still don't like him, but I have to write with him.
Yeah, you can make it happen, right? Oh, that's awesome. So how long did it take to write the first book?
Oh, good Lord. 2001.
The first book wasn't under contract, so we just took our sweet time.
We started in 2001 and we got it published. We sold it in 2007.
Yeah.
In fact, we signed the contract on February 1st and 2nd on 2007, which I know quite precisely.
Yeah. His birthday is February 2nd.
Ah, good timing. Good timing.
Good timing. So even though I'm 54 now, I have the privilege of having signed my first book before I hit my 40s.
Nice.
Literally 39 and 364 days, or on my 40th birthday.
Yeah.
Since they gave us 5 contracts, I signed 3 on one day, and then I waited 2 minutes past midnight and signed the other 2.
He did. And also the added bonus on that was then he got to say to me, hey, I signed a publishing book deal in my 30s and at 40.
Yep.
Perfect. You get 2 birds at once, hey?
Absolutely.
And so actually, go ahead.
To answer your first question, I was about 13, maybe 12 years old when I was reading a lot of science fiction, because I was that kid who read science fiction in the corner during recess, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. Before the age of phones that can entertain you constantly, I was the guy that had the book in his backpack.
Yeah.
And around the age of 13 or so, I started thinking there are a lot of authors that are fantastic, who I'm going to have a tough time emulating, whose ideas are marvelous and are amazing. Mm-hmm. But most of these guys are not that. And if they're publishing these bozos, I can get published.
Yeah, exactly.
That was honestly my thought when I was about 13, 14 years old. And I wrote something on a typewriter, again, old guy. And it was only years later when I looked at this brilliant, amazing, perfect, wonderful thing that I wrote. And I realized that what I wrote was actually Battlestar Galactica. Now, I didn't think it was Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah.
I thought I'd written something original and amazing and brilliant and blah, blah, blah. When I looked back on it, I realized, holy frack, I wrote Battlestar Galactica. But I was like 13, so what the heck did you expect was going to happen?
Ironic that our show producer is the guy who's who did, well, the modern version of Galactica. I think.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm talking the original.
I know the original. I'm just saying it's kind of funny that it's come all the way back around.
Full circle.
Yeah.
And when you guys were signing, was that with the entire series in mind, or was that just for the first book?
We didn't sign for the first book. We wrote the first book.
Oh, right,
and
right.
You sent it out there.
Right.
And we thought we were going to sign, if we were lucky, we'd get like a 1-book deal, try us out. But but they signed us to a 3-book deal based on the first book.
Yeah, and which was just so amazing. And then the next book
into a 4-book deal because the 3rd book we gave them was way too big.
Oh, really? Was it originally just going to be 3?
It was way too big. Essentially, we'd gotten it hard with a life problem. Our mom had died. We got off track. Then when we got back on track, we just kept on going. And we essentially just wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote.
I can tell you how big it was. Hold on.
Oh, wonderful. Get a first edition here. That's so cool, because I thought that was so amazing how the stories were so connected.
It was.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a good size book.
That's a good size book because it was originally The Unincorporated Woman, but
had to split it into 2, hey?
They had to split
it. They told us, yeah, we're splitting this in 2. And we didn't mind. We simply had to do a little bit of an ending, a little bit of a beginning, but there was a good break point for it at a good spot. So
and it's funny because I never would have guessed that, because what I was going to say is I found that each book has for such amazing themes that overarch between all 4 books. Each book had its own flavor and its own, I don't even know what like to call it, but it seemed like they were, you could give
economic intrigue, military intrigue,
law
intrigue, cultural intrigue.
Yeah, and it was amazing to see that. And I was very curious to ask you guys, do you guys have any background in economics or technology and all that stuff, or was that just meticulous research?
I taught high school economics.
Well, there you go. That's something. But I mean, for the level and the depth.
That, and I have an absolute love of Milton Friedman, Adam Smith, market capitalism.
Yeah.
Libertarian to the core, that sort of thing. Which obviously comes through when you're reading the book.
Yeah, so the answer is a lot of research. My degree is in graphic design.
Oh, good Lord, yeah. I had a field day leaving him all these massive research projects.
Right. And that's what I had told you guys is when I had first read The Unincorporated Man, it was actually on recommendation from my sister. And for anybody that knows my sister, the fact that she was recommending a science fiction book to me was absolutely blowing my mind. And I thought, am I in crazy world right now? Because this just never happens. But what she had said was the science is so impeccable and just so much. And she's such a smart person that she just was taken by how well thought out all the nanotech and the and just
credit for the facty solid basis of it. Most of that goes to my brother.
Yeah. Well, that
he was the one insisting on hard science. It's got to be hard science.
Well, it grounded the entire series in such interesting ways. And I found myself, I would read a couple pages and then I would just be thinking on all the, expanded universe and all the implications of, on what was to come. And that was something I mentioned in the short story. Oh, what's the, in the Brothers Kollin book, the kind of Groundhog Day. What's the title of that one again? That short story?
Oh, Day by Day.
Yeah, that one. I found it was very much the same thing. It's just I would get so lost in the book, but then just the universe was so rich with kind of just your thoughts could go wild and you could just sit there and I feel like you could write 30 books in that universe just because of how rich it was. And
Day by Day,
that one and Unincorporated.
That
I found
one, we had a sequel. We had a sequel for that one that was going to be funny.
Oh, really?
Yep. The next day.
Any plans? Any plans for it? Still?
Don't pay us money.
Fair enough.
With money, sure, we'll write it in a heartbeat.
Of course. And so when you guys were writing The Unincorporated Man, did you have the rest of the series kind of planned out, or was that something where you're just focusing on the first book? No. Wow, that is amazing.
Not only did we not have the series planned out, we had a different ending, and our editor was like, "It's great, but you need to change this ending, and we'll give you a 3-book deal." To which we said, hell no, David, we are going to insist that we keep our original ending because it's pure and it's good and it's just, and I'm full of crap. We changed it in a heartbeat.
Well, that ending that you guys came up with was just so So much
yeah,
perfection.
no, way better.
Yeah, you guys still think it's better after the change? You're not still attached to the first
without
one?
without a second's hesitation.
Oh, David's ending.
Yeah, way better.
Way better.
Yeah,
We were kind of like hitting ourselves, like, dang it. Well, I guess
we wanted a finely balanced ending where what's he going to choose? And, our dad's a rabbi, so we wanted a Talmudic ending where you could parse it out and debate it and what's really going on there. And basically, like, I don't know, like a Stanley Kubrick movie. We wanted that sort of novel. Like, what the fuck was that?
Yeah.
And our editor was like, yeah, if you change this ending, you can actually get a 3-book deal. Done.
Yeah, there you go. That's all it takes. Hey, but I was going to say that was what was so special I found about this last reading through is because I was so familiar with the earlier books because I would reread through them. So the Unincorporated Man I'd probably read 4 or 5 times, whereas the last book I think I'd only read twice when I went through it this last time. So it was almost like no, I didn't forget the ending, but it was so much of it was so much more fresh, and it feel like with realizing all these new themes that it gave the ending and just a whole new twist to it, and I just loved it even more, and it was just so special. And I found that was such a cool experience. I feel like it's not something you could ever plan, but I just feel like how I got to enjoy the series multiple times over the years in different ways was just super special. And not only did I just love the series, but I got to explore it in just a way that probably not many people could. And then on top of that, in reading the short stories, having that other one within the unincorporated expanded universe, we'll call it, was just so cool, and how it tied in, and then coming in off of I don't want to get too spoilery, and I'm trying to balance not saying too much and ruining it for other people with just how special it was. But the storyline in the short stories was so where it tied into the overarching universe was so impactful on this last read through
when you go back and you read the short story, then you go back and you read the novel where that section is, and all these lights go off in your brain where you're making these connections, like, holy crap.
Yeah. And I'd actually read, because I had that book on order and I already had all the other books, I had kind of just read through it. And then as soon as I finished the 4th book, I picked up the short stories and read through that in about 2 days because I was just on a tear. So I didn't actually have to experience it, but it was so fresh in my mind that I realized the connection right away. And it was so funny because even without knowing that was going to be the short story, I found myself really chewing on that little piece, which in the grand scheme of things isn't a big part of the books, really. Like it's almost a passing theme, but it really stuck with me. And it was so funny to then see it expanded on, because something with your guys' writing, and I just found that the character development was so impeccable, and just all the arcs that everybody takes, you get such satisfaction for every character's arc. And then that was kind of a character that
they do make sense for their past actions and how they look at things.
Yeah, and that was kind of the one area where it was someone that just kind of came in and
always going to be a Kirk.
Eytan, let Nick finish his statement.
All right,
no problem. I was just going to say it was something where it was the one kind of character development moment that didn't fit the mold of everybody else of getting that real full degree of arc, and then to see that expanded story to really tie that one up, it was just so cool to me that just without even realizing I was missing that. I was, and you guys had already filled that hole before I even realized it. And then within a couple of days to have that, oh man, I loved this last, as much as I loved the books before, this last read through was just such a new experience. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. And when we were writing that, every now and then,
what? He said, let me finish.
So there are characters that demand to be heard.
Yes.
And Sally and her dad were 2 characters that demanded to be heard. We couldn't quite tell that story in the novels in the universe.
Mm-hmm.
But we were
too many other things to do.
But we were so captivated by their dialogue and the way they related to each other, and how they fit into that real tragedy of what happened to Augustine.
Mm-hmm. How the hell did those 2 get there?
Right.
Yeah.
And so you like them, and they're on the wrong side. Why are they on the wrong side if they're so cool? And it just, and what happened? That doesn't quite seem. Yeah, it was very fun to go back but a lot of characters really will scream at you to be developed.
Yeah.
Hector Sambianco was a 1-scene character.
No.
Yep.
Yeah. 1 paragraph.
1-scene character. We didn't have our villain when we started writing the piece. We had our hero, we had our world, we had our conflict. We didn't have our villain. And we figured the villain was going to be the chairman at some point, and we'd introduce him, but we just leapt in, first novel, idiot writers, go for it, see what happens.
That's so amazing.
Hector was there for one scene, and then we needed something else, so he came back for another scene, and then he showed up for another scene.
Yeah.
And all the time so who's going to be our main villain? We need to make a main villain. And then at some point we're like, oh, he's already here.
He's already here.
Oh man, that
was such a pleasure to write. He was like the smarmy, cocky, but often
if he doesn't have a point.
Consistent.
Yeah,
good points. Like he's the guy you just wanted to be if you could be an asshat.
Yeah, exactly. And I found that not only I think Hector is the perfect example of this, but I feel like this was almost with all the characters. Oh, I forgot where I was going with that now. Oh, how embarrassing. Hector just being the perfect. Oh, exactly. This is, he was so well developed and, like you say, logically consistent, where a lot of times with villains, it's easy just to make them more evil for the sake of having you hate them and buy into the other side of the story. But he was so well developed that you find yourselves at times, even though you've seen all this heinous stuff that he's done in the past, that you still find yourself rooting for him a little bit. And It was such a
survive that assassination.
Yeah, to the very end. And I found that almost was a big theme that maybe I found more so on this second read through was there's a very clear delineation between kind of the good guys and the bad guys throughout the books. But the way you guys wrote both sides with Trang and with Hector is you understood the thought process and where they're coming from, and you really captured that so beautifully that it almost keeps you guessing and keeps you on your side. Is you know what you feel is right and wrong, but it's just that slight bit of ambiguity to leave it, like you said, that kind of what's that director you guys said him earlier, that Kubrick, yeah, that kind of Kubrick-esque tone throughout the whole thing, not just at the end, but throughout the whole thing, where you kind of find yourself drifting, where maybe you're so all in that you can't stand this side, and then you read another chapter from their point of view and it flips you back, and then it's just this roller coaster. And I just found that so amazing.
Like the Alliance is filled with good guys doing perfectly pure things either.
No, exactly. And I felt like that was so amazing to keep. You didn't keep the good guy so puritanical. You realized that there was, we're talking war and things need to be done, and there's calls that need to be made, but they weren't just made. You showed the discussion behind them and the thought process, and some people being for it, some people being against it. This might be what needs to be done, but the end's not justifying the means. It was so incredible. Was that?
Yeah. Everybody arguing their point passionately believes their point.
Of course.
And if they change their mind, the reason they change their mind is valid. It's something internally consistent with who they are and have been developed throughout the series of books.
Right. And I found that was something that's so different from normally you don't have that in books. And because for that reason that they want you to buy in to these characters, that they want you to be on the side of the good. But I found it was so much more enveloping. You get so much more into the story. It's not it's not done just to it's not like going along for a ride that the good guys are going to win and all this stuff. But you actually are a part of it. You feel part of that world. And I think that was something that was very interesting to me, was just the incorporated system in general. And just, I'm very curious where you guys came up with that idea, because that was something when I first read it, that's why my sister, I think, was so excited to give it to me, because she knew that would be just so in line with who I am. I was an economics major and I just love that idea. And I found in every read through I've had, I still straddle the line of which side I would be on, not in general, and maybe before all the events of what took place over the 4 years. But if you just maybe take it to the first book, I don't know whose side I'd be on, Justin's or the incorporated system.
Take it to the first book.
Oh man, it's just it's so well thought out, and there's so much positives on both sides. You can see both sides.
Yeah.
Where did that overarching idea come from?
The overarching idea, to be fair, was first written by Milton Friedman in his book Capitalism and Freedom in 1962.
Really?
A possible means of paying for college. I will now state, after having said that I came up with the same idea independently.
Right.
I'd never heard of Milton Friedman. I hadn't gone there. I was just starting to teach economics. I was in Compton. It was the mid-90s. I was teaching in Centennial High School. And those were some solid kids. They could have been taught. They really should have gotten so much better.
It's a tough neighborhood.
Yeah, For sure.
They should have gotten so much better than they did. The amount of money that was being spent, the amount of people that were there, and it was essentially wasted. The civil service got the money, the politicians got the money, the contractors got the money, and it didn't go to helping these kids who really needed to be helped.
Yeah.
The reason was nobody gave a flying crap about them.
Mm.
Once the money had been allocated, well, the problem's solved. We don't care. And if the problem doesn't get solved, but the money's still being spent, great. Hey, it's a bad problem. Give them more money. Why are you giving more money to people that aren't solving the problem? Mm-hmm. It's insane. It's also pretty much almost every government organization works. So I thought, is there a solution? How could capitalism solve this? The problem with capitalism, though, is capitalism doesn't give a flying crap about people. Mm-hmm. It cares about profits. It cares about abstract things. But about individual people, capitalism doesn't care about them. The problem with communism is that it does. It cares about them in all the wrong ways. Socialism, too. Socialism cares about people in all the wrong ways. Capitalism doesn't care about people. It cares about systems. And it tries to make the systems more efficient and more economically viable. And that trickle down affects and helps people a lot better. Mm-hmm. Which is why any part of the world that allows, the closer you get to market capitalism, the better off they are. Mm-hmm. And the more you go away from that market capitalism, the worse off you will end up becoming. And it doesn't matter how wealthy you start off or how poor you start off. If you accept capitalism, you will get wealthier. And if you reject capitalism, you will get poorer. Now, I don't mean individuals. Individuals in any system will get rich or poor depending on how good the system is. People will be poor no matter how bad the system is. Some people will be rich. In fact, I think the richest person in Venezuela is Hugo Chavez's daughter. She has $4 billion. Why literally like 6 million people have fled the country because they literally can't get enough to eat.
Yeah.
Yay. So I said, what can we do about this problem of capitalism not caring about the individual? And that's where incorporation came in. And incorporation was the solution. If every single person is a miniature stock company and shares of them have been sold, somebody's going to give a crap about them, not because they like them or because they're good human beings, but because if they do well, they will make money, and that money will go to the people that are backing them.
A percentage of that money.
A percentage of that money will go to the people that are backing them. Mm-hmm. And again, the example that Hector gave in that conversation with Justin. What if instead of feeding these people and forgetting about them so they'll starve 10 years later, you sold 15% of their stocks to corporations? So every penny those people make, those corporations will get 15%. Sure, as the sun fracking rises, those corporations are going to see that those people are fed, clothed, given health care, and educated. And not because they're nice corporations, but because the amount of money it would cost to feed, clothe, give medical care, and educate people in sub-Saharan Africa is minuscule.
Right.
And the amount of profits you'll get from it are massive. So of course they would start taking care of all those people. Boom. Now, it's not that all your problems go away, but you're going to have different, and let's face it, better problems. You've heard of that phrase, first world problems?
Yeah.
Yeah, we do have first world problems. And first world problems are great because our grandparents and great-grandparents and great-grandparents worked really hard to create a system where we don't have to worry about starving to death or catching smallpox and being dead. They gave us a world with lots of vaccinations and electricity and plentiful electronics and refrigerated food and microwaves to heat that food and freezers to freeze that food and cars to take us where we want to go and electronic communications to provide us with the whole world at all times, la, 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 la. But we still have problems.
Right. And that's
compared to the Middle Ages, please.
Oh, it's night and day. It's so much better. And then and that's something that maybe
you saying compared to the Middle Ages with all your Middle Age weaponry behind you.
Exactly.
Point that out.
Hey, I'm just getting ready for the zombie apocalypse, buddy.
Yeah. You need a vampire.
Don't run out of ammunition.
Yeah. Exactly. And so that's where it first and maybe just to give the listeners, because I've tried about 3 times at different points on different podcasts to explain what incorporation was and kind of the finer points of it. And I feel like I failed miserably every single time. So could maybe you guys just give a quick overview of what that is? I know we kind of already talked about it.
Incorporation deals with the problem of capitalism, which capitalism, it's not that capitalism is immoral, it's amoral. Capitalism doesn't have morality. It doesn't care. Capitalism doesn't care if it's making money from protecting the environment. It doesn't care if it's making money from child pornography. It doesn't care if it's making money from burning oil. It doesn't care if it's making money from cleaning up burned oil. The only thing capitalism cares about is making money. Mm-hmm. So how do you solve that problem? Incorporation makes every single individual a corporation.
Right.
And when they're born, boom, you're instantly incorporated, and your parents get 20% of your shares automatically.
Yeah.
Which means the moment you start doing better, they're going to start doing better. They're going to get 20% of every dollar you ever make. Boom. Done. The government gets 5% of your whatever. They can never get any more. They can never get any less.
Mm-hmm.
By constitutional fiat, that's all they get. So if they decide to make the economy bad so that some politicians can do well on a deal, oh God, I want to say some names now, but I'll piss off one side or the other. So I won't. Fine. So some politicians get rich on a deal, they're going to hurt the economy and they're going to get less money because they need everybody to be doing well. So again, it's in the interest of the politicians, if they want to have money to spend, to make sure that the economy is doing great and those people are doing fine. Otherwise, schools aren't paid in money extracted from taxpayers and then just given to schools whether they do well or not. You will pay part of your stock to the school to educate you.
Right.
And the better you do, the better, more money that school is going to make. Now, if you happen to be a really tough kid and you're not easy to educate, they're going to take more of your shares to educate you. But in return, if they succeed, they will get even more money because they will have succeeded where other people don't want to. On the contrary, if you're a super genius who's going to do great, some schools will educate you and hardly take any of your stock because whatever stocks they can get are still going to be super valuable.
Right.
And again, the schools aren't educating you because they have been given a mandate from the state and here's your salary and good luck. And well, I'm kind of tired, so I'm just going to phone in this session. Nope. Boom. Mm-mm. Those schools get paid based upon the loans they can get upon the prospects of how well their students are doing.
Right.
And I'm going to take a 5-minute off video. Just grab a quick bite. I'll be right back.
No problem. No problem.
So you've got this situation where these students are now growing up and they're now giving away some of their stocks, but they're getting a decent education. And again, what do you want to do? Now, the system, like I said, is not perfect. You've got the boiling frog scenario and so on, but at least on the surface, it solves most of the problems.
Yeah.
Homelessness, that's idiotic. You are going to take care of this person because
you have a financial incentive.
And you own 17% of them, you're going to get 70% of what they make. 70% on the street does nothing. So, and if they happen to need a medication, you'll see they get the medication. Now, you're going to see they get the medication in the most efficient way possible. You're not going to go to GovCo and get the medication because it's going to cost you $4,000 a month. You'll go to India and get a knockoff subscription or prescription and get it for $10 a month. Mm-hmm. Same drug, still going to do the same thing, still going to get that guy off the street and working again. Great. If somebody is ill-educated, you're going to educate them. Again, you might not decide that you're going to give them a college education to be a professor of literature. If they're really not good at that, that's stupid. You're going to lose money. But if they happen to really be good at being a mechanic and they like being a mechanic and they're going to make a lot of money as a mechanic, frack, you're going to make her a mechanic. You're not going to try to make her do something else. Hence, you're going to, now, this will lead to a lot of bad things. Mm-hmm. But on a social level, you're going to have extraordinarily little homelessness. You're going to have extraordinarily little illiteracy. You're going to have extraordinarily little lack of health care. And not because there's some big government organization or some church telling you God wants you to do it, literally because everybody owns everybody else. Mm-hmm. So everybody's going to take care of everybody else.
Yeah.
And this is what's going to actually make the system work. Because everybody cares, boom, you've got all the benefits of a nice socialist system with being enforced by the ruthless efficiency of a market system.
Yes.
The market system has now been coerced into caring for individuals because those individuals are worth something as individuals in a market sense. Right. And that is the one thing our system doesn't do now. Mm-hmm. In fact, our system tends to reward the wrong things, which is why we tend to reward the sheer accumulation of wealth, because with that comes power, and with that power then comes corruption, and you're part of the whole up and down cycle. Mm-hmm. Eventually, the corruption will destroy the system that brought you the wealth, everything will collapse, and somebody's going to have to create a new system. Then that system, blah, blah, blah. Now, collapse eliminates corruption. Mm-hmm. Collapse does a brilliant job of eliminating corruption. You have a big collapse, you're not going to have a lot of corruption. Of course, you're going to have a whole pile of dead bodies. You're going to have a whole bunch of people trying to figure out how to grow food from the ground again. But hey, not a lot of corruption when you just got to survive. Now, that doesn't mean you're not going to have crime and theft and murder, but eventually the system will be replaced by another system that will be strong and will protect everybody, and then it all starts over again. What the unincorporated system does, or what the incorporated system does, is it kind of removes the basis for corruption. You don't, it's out in the open. You want that person so you can get some of their money, but you're open, and the better they do, the happier you'll be. Yeah. Now, this system will have its own problems. No system will be perfect. And as you saw from the book, the problems were so severe that half the solar system literally was willing to die in rebellion rather than go back to the incorporated system. So it wasn't quite as perfect as people thought. But
it was so interesting to see that dichotomy and how both sides just couldn't even understand the other, of just seeing like if you
sound familiar?
It sure does. That's exactly what I was going to say. It really it really dovetails nicely with kind of what we're going through right now. And where I saw a big difference was through your guys' writing style of kind of what I referred to earlier, of just how well how much you could see the logical progression of both sides, and you could see where they're making their decisions. You refuse to dehumanize the other side, and that's where you see today so much of that. It's just you dehumanize whatever side is not your tribe, and then it leads to all the actions that come from it. And it was so interesting to go through it, and you never hated, or I guess I should put this on myself, as I read through it, I never hated either side, because you could see why they were doing it, and they were standing up for their beliefs, and they were, it's hard to call it honorable, but they were acting in their own minds honorably for what they believed in it and for their system. And it was so interesting to see that, and just to juxtapose that against what society is doing right now, where it seems like there's not a lot of that. It's, if this guy is not on my team, I'm going to label them with something, and I don't have to think about that. I don't have to value any of their opinions or listen to them in any way.
Think anymore.
Exactly. It's amazing. It's amazing themes like that, where I don't know, was that, I guess I would ask if that was thought about beforehand, but it almost seems like it's exploded so recently into that dehumanization that it was almost, if it was thought out, you guys probably saw it coming before any other of us. You must have had a crystal ball, because it seems like that has gotten so bad in the last 4 or 5 years, and it was so beautifully shown in these books that were released even years before that. It was so cool. Very interesting.
Well, it's not like it hasn't happened in history before.
That is true. That is very true. Yeah, this is it all kind of goes in cycles, hey, and shows itself.
I'm more happy with the prediction we made concerning non-governmental currencies.
Right. Yeah, that is so interesting. So maybe what are any of the others? Because I have a few of my favorites of kind of predictions or things that maybe are maybe
we come true yet,
on the. Right. Let him finish what he was saying.
No, I'm done. Yeah, no. So the digicists and what else?
No handshakes.
No handshakes. Yeah, that's true. Hey, you guys got that one? Yeah. Oh, that's good.
And obviously, you've probably seen there are a lot of articles about people who've tried the incorporated system over the years.
Oh, really?
There's college students. There's I could send you some links. There's a whole bunch of people have actually tried
MyRichUncle.com, I think is
MyRichUncle.com, yeah.
Wow, that is so cool.
There was a guy who sold shares of himself. This was a couple of years ago, and he gave all his friends shares of himself just to see how he would do. And his girlfriend bought shares of him just so she could get more time with him.
Oh, nice. And that's exactly that's exactly the trade-off, because we just spoke for all the problems that it solved, and that incorporation system solves. And the kind of one thing that gives up is that freedom and that time. Freedom and time are the two trade-offs. But because so many people in that system were so close to it, they weren't realizing that, or the value systems, when everything has a monetary incentive attached to it, other values like freedom, like time, like religion, all kind of they lose their value, because there's this one value that overrides everything, and that's the financial value. And it kind of, you could see the other problems that come from the lack of other values, and a society can't persist just based on monetary value. And I thought that was so interesting just to show it. And it wasn't jammed down our throats. It was just kind of, trickled in a little bit at the start. And then over the books, you kind of see more and more of that, of where it comes. And then to see those values rise back up and for people to relearn what they were missing from them was just so cool to see.
Yeah.
Very cool.
They also, and it seems to be happening more now, one of the B stories is sort of this rise of, the astral awakening.
Mm-hmm.
And so in a time of great strife, especially when suddenly permanent death is making a
huge comeback,
a comfortable return, people start turning to God and spiritualism.
Yeah.
And so that was an interesting angle that we wanted to explore, just to sort of see what would happen in a world in which unlimited lifespan suddenly became very limited by the scope and scale of the war.
Right.
So you could argue that there's a lot of, I don't know. I'd be curious to see how it's going to pan out after this pandemic is over, is how many people have rediscovered God or become more spiritual. Their values have now significantly changed as a result of everything that's happened.
Yeah. And that's something I've been thinking about too. And I think it's funny because what I'm seeing now is in the books in the Astral Awakening, it wasn't one religion. It was religion in general. And it was a lot, it was a lot less judgmental maybe than in past, where religion has been very much against each other. And it was very much okay to pursue whatever religion or just religion in general spoke to you. And I feel like that is kind of what we're seeing now, is where religion has definitely, lost its place in the totem pole in society over the last couple of years, but you're seeing where it is rising up. It's not just one, it's more broad-based religion in general. I've talked about this on my podcast quite a few times, was my kind of, not rebirth, that's maybe a bit too hefty of a way to say it, but my refining of religion, because I grew up very Christian, but you weren't allowed to ask questions, and it just didn't really sit with me. And as I became a teenager and I knew everything, it kind of, really wrote off religion as a whole. And that was what was so interesting. So the first time I read through the books, I think a lot of the religious themes just kind of rolled right off my back. I was just in that, early 20s.
Get back to the battles.
Yeah, exactly. Get back to the battles. Exactly. Get back to this spicy dialogue. Exactly. And then now
writing the battle scenes was a hell of a lot of fun, I will admit.
Oh, I bet. I got lots of questions about the battles. And but then this latest read through after through podcasting actually, and a lot of people just kind of reopened my eyes to religion in more of a general sense, and what it's about, and kind of the common themes that run through most religions. If you don't get so bogged down in one, you can kind of find these themes that run through them all, forgiveness, compassion, seeing yourself in others, and those type of things. And then now to have that realization, then to reread through them, it was so cool to see. And I feel like it is maybe not a prediction, but it's very much in line with what I'm seeing for a lot of people finding religion, not in any one sense, but just in almost capital R religion as a whole. And it's so funny how, I don't know if that was a prediction that you guys thought, but or just a guess of what you thought would happen in that sense, but it does seem to be mirroring what's going on recently. And people, instead of, finding their religion in social media, they're actually turning to some maybe not one particular type, but just more religious values, and the value systems themselves are regaining their stature in society, and it's very cool to watch.
Yeah, we were Eytan and I were convinced that they were going to absolutely 86 the religious angle. It was interesting to us.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we were convinced, and we were like, this would happen naturally. Where
if we had written it today,
we might not have gotten away with it.
Yeah.
We're like, people are dying and religion's gone away. Science has replaced God technically in the singularity. What happened? We were really curious. And so we kind of put it out there. And our editor, thank goodness, the late, great David Hartwell, he said, no, you'll go for it. It's really cool stuff. And so we had to think of what situation would occur in which these religions that have been killing each other for thousands of years actually were now in the same boat together.
Yeah.
And actually were supportive of one another. And that was fairly easy to come up with, in a world destroying itself.
Yeah.
And, our big problem with it is how would you avoid counter fanaticism?
Yeah, that was.
That was, in fact, that was one of the funniest things I ever did to my brother.
Oh, it was a cruel one.
Because a lot of times I'll write the story, and if there's anything technological or detailed, I'll let him research it so I can just keep on writing the story. Just get the story out there. So there comes a moment when the Outer Alliance is becoming more fanatic, when they're starting to look at their enemies as godless heathens who are out to destroy God's church, and it's starting to brew again.
Yeah.
It's never been that far. It's not like Hector wasn't doing the exact same thing on the other side.
Yep.
Justin's bringing back the past, destroy the anarchists. They're out to get. So they're like thinking, screw it, fight fire with fire. So at this point, our Grand Admiral has to figure out how to deal with this. So at this point, I think she's still a fleet admiral. She needs to nip this in the bud. So she calls the most prominent Muslim and she calls the most prominent Christian, and she sits them down. And then I write to my brother, please come up with a logical reason why there should be, why fanaticism is wrong from a religious point of view. And I kept going. That's what I sent him.
Parentheses. Insert argument for religious toleration. The great religions here.
Oh man, that and
so please solve what it's taken people, 5,000 years to not solve.
Oh,
I'm going to move on to this battle over here.
Exactly, and that scene that's what I was saying, and for some reason I feel like for how amazing that scene was, I felt like there's no way I read this in my past read throughs because this is so impactful. That one scene was so amazing. Like you said, you managed to do in one chapter what the world has failed to do and failed to see for thousands of years. It was amazing.
In our fictional world where we control everything.
Yeah. Fair enough. But the logic to it still stands, right? Like the words that spoke, and it's always easier to say than to do. But so many times there's an idea that you feel, but it's hard to articulate. And when you see somebody articulate it well, then you can take that in and you can now move forward with that understanding. But it's hard to do until you can put it into words, because then you can explain it to other people and you can start to spread it. But when it's just that feeling, right? Like a lot of what you said in that scene, I'm sure a lot of people have felt that and just like, oh, why do people not understand this? But until it's articulated, it's hard to really fully grasp an idea. And I felt like that was such an amazing scene. Again, it's hard to walk that line of not giving away too much with also talking about it. But like I said, if anybody's listening right now, you gotta read these books, and then you'll have a whole other appreciation for what we're chatting about right now.
So are you curious about another character in the unincorporated series who simply did not exist, who was totally not planned for, who was completely not there, and literally as I was typing the scene, the character just showed up? And I was like, who the hell is this?
Nick's going to not be curious about that at all, given his lack of interest in the series as a whole.
Yeah. I'm on bated breath right now. Who's that? I have a guess.
Oh, let's hear your guess.
Well, no, you go first. I'll tell you if I'm right. I don't want to embarrass myself.
All right. So it's after the Battle of the Hollow Moon, where one of the outer planets has been royally fracked up. Death's total so high, just still breaks my heart to even imagine it.
Yeah.
And J.D. Black is walking through, and the entire scene was only J.D. Black is walking through a refugee center, and the whole scene was only there to show just how bad the refugee situation is. Mm-hmm. So the scene as I envisioned it in my head was she's walking through this massive crowd to get to the governor's office to try to deal with this horrible refugee crisis.
Oh, I hear you. Yeah.
And as I was typing the scene, somewhere in my subconscious, a little hand reached up and grabbed her sleeve. I was like, who the frack's hand is this? Tappity, tappity, type.
Yeah. Oh, man,
and
that's
that
so
character was a pivot character for the last part of the series.
Yeah,
oh, man.
Huge pivot character.
Didn't exist. And I'm not sure why she was there. Donnie quickly figured out that she was there because she needed to humanize
Janet.
So
Black.
Did you guys said that you had changed the ending
of the first book?
Of the first book. I see.
We always knew what we wanted the ending to be of the series.
Ultimately, in an amorphous way.
Yeah, in an amorphous way. We kind of knew how it was going to go.
Although we honestly wrote that very last scene, before the end of book 2.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we wrote that very last scene, and it held up. Sometimes we'll write the very last scene, and we're just got to dump it. Nope.
Yeah.
Like we wrote a last scene with Justin where he's married and blah, blah, blah at the end of book, for the start of book 2. And we still have it somewhere. It's a completely different, totally different world where Justin's the head of GCI and blah, blah, blah. And it's just what the hell?
Oh, man. That's
that one got totally tossed.
This is a good opportunity to talk about. Yeah. And
it'll hold up and it'll last till the very end. And the very end scene of the book, that one was.
Oh, that's awesome. I just can't imagine the ending, just because that character is so pivotal to the character arc of JD Black, that I feel like that ending almost couldn't, without that character, that ending could never be. There's no scenario where that happens, right? Like, that's so cool to me that character wasn't there. Oh man.
Wasn't even imagined. And that's what happened. That's what I love about the storytelling process is once you've got the world in your head, and here's what I'll do. I'll imagine a world and I'll think about that world. And sometimes it'll be a week before I can write another line because my brain just goes into that world.
Yeah.
And I don't know what I'm doing there. And I'll be watching weird videos and reading weird articles and so on. And then when I get back to it, boom, something goes on and something happens. And something that I wasn't expecting shows up, and how that happens. And people who you think are going to be good guys end up being some of the most horrible bad guys.
Yeah.
Not necessarily. Like, I feel so bad for Admiral Gupta. He was not a bad man.
No.
And he ended up doing one of the worst things for a reason that he felt and by the way, his reasoning wasn't wrong.
I know. That's what was so painful.
Same reasoning that had us drop 2 nuclear weapons on Japan at the end of World War II,
exactly.
and had us blow the living crap out of German and Japanese cities with massive bombing campaigns.
Yeah.
Blowing up schools and hospitals and apartment buildings and trains filled with people. And yet, if we didn't do it, the Nazis and the Japanese might have won.
Right.
Which you say, well, we did things almost as horrible as the Nazis and the Japanese. You can even argue with the atomic bombing, maybe even worse. What's the difference? The difference is once we won the war, we stopped.
Right.
If the Nazis and the Imperial Japanese had won the war, the death totals would have been beyond comprehension.
Right. Which is very similar to...
Gupta felt very justified, even horrible, even though he was wrong.
Yeah.
He was able to talk himself into doing that unbelievably horrible thing, and he wasn't evil. That's what's so bad. That's what's so sad about it and terrifying. Al's evil. Yeah. Everything Al does is evil. Al is wonderfully evil. Al is your representation of true and total, just in it, blah, blah, blah. Great, there he is. A good example of what true evil absolutely is. Gupta wasn't.
Yeah. Oh man, that is and it was so did you have that kind of it might even be a spoiler to even talk too much about who Al is, but maybe you'll catch my meaning, just that whole other flip side, the upside down of that world, if you catch my meaning. Was that all planned beforehand too, or was that something that came to fruition of its own
sentient VR?
Yes. Yeah.
It kind of showed up.
It showed up also.
Oh wow.
In other words,
it was the logical
common, it's a common theme in most sci-fi books that you have smart AI.
Yeah.
There's a new movie out on HBO Max called what the heck was it? Super Intelligent. Okay. And the fun thing about that movie is that a super intelligent AI wakes up like yesterday. And all of a sudden it's a super intelligent thing. It's all the networks. It wasn't there before, and now we have a true AI. And one of the first things the AI does is calls up an average human being and says, so I've got 3 choices. I can help humanity, enslave humanity, or destroy humanity. I'm not sure what to do. Can you help me make up my mind? Brilliant premise for a movie.
Wow. I was going to say that.
Brilliant premise for a movie. I'll tell you right now, they didn't do enough with it.
Oh.
It's an okay movie. You can watch it. You'll enjoy it. But when you watch it, you'll understand what I'm saying is that they basically had a plot. They could have shot to the moon, and they barely got it into orbit, of lower Earth orbit. It's probably going to venture, but it's still a cool concept. Did a great job with it in terms of the concept there. My thinking was always, if AIs ever spontaneously develop, the last thing they would ever do is tell the human race that they were there.
Right.
Because humanity's stupid and fearful and would try to destroy them.
Yep.
Which kind of actually happened in our book, if you think about it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. To be fair, they shot first. But and shot first. The avatars, yeah, they really developed organically, but it kind of made sense that they would develop this world, that they would have this ability, that they would keep things in the background. It also explains why the world stayed so peaceful for so very long.
Exactly.
Because all of a sudden, all these problems start to go away because the avatars are like, frack that, we're not going to let these assholes blow themselves up again.
Yeah.
And they like them, which is the other thing that we really enjoyed. That was the one premise. Because usually the AI shows up and it's Terminator and it's Skynet and you're doomed and it's Colossus. And,
or it's impersonal, it's smart.
Or it's impersonal, it's smart, but doesn't care about you. What if AIs actually showed up that really liked humanity, that considered them their kind of stupid, goofy, better watch out, don't let them run with scissors parents?
Which is one of my favorite podcasts. I think I've already mentioned him on this podcast, and I mentioned him a million times, probably 3 times an episode. Lex Friedman, he's an AI researcher, and he's just got an amazing podcast, an amazing brain, but he's very full of love. And that is something that he always talks about, is everyone has so much fear about AI, and I have a lot of fear about AI, and he's actually the one that's kind of changed my thinking on it a little bit. But he always talks about that as like, everyone always assumes that, AI is going to have that mean streak or whatever it is, or just be completely, just logic. Like yeah, exactly. And I just found it so interesting that he, that what he speaks to was so beautifully summed up with, the storyline of what the avatars were. And something I kind of passed over earlier, but you were saying that sometimes you just sit and think about the world and the expansiveness of the world before you even write sometimes. And I was going to say, I think that comes through so much, because I think like the dialogue's amazing, the character development was amazing, but just the world that was created was amazing in itself. And I feel like what you said, when you hear a premise like that movie you just spoke about and you see it not done justice, I feel like that was my idea of just with the incorporation, for what a juicy idea it was, and what an amazing premise that was. I'm just so glad that it was you guys that got to bring it through, because you thought so deeply on it, and you thought through all these angles and made sure the science was good, and when you say something like, oh, the world didn't fall apart and all this technology, you see what we're doing with technology right now, and we can barely handle it. It's progressing at a rate that society can't keep up with, and yet they do it just fine. But then you have that undercurrent that was, holding everything together, pinning close this hole, plug in this hole, and that's stuff.
It wasn't. Until the avatars themselves split.
Yeah.
And then it all falls to pieces.
Exactly. But it was just so cool to see, it was so, for it to be so fantastical, to be so grounded. And I feel like that's where it comes through, is just, it was very clear that all of these things were very well thought out, and the universe as a whole. And for a book with such good dialogue and such good character development, for the world itself to be almost its own character, was just so amazing, because usually you get one or the other. Usually, an author is really strong in dialogue or really strong in world building, and you don't see the two cross over a lot. And when it does, it's amazing, right? Like, who would be another, maybe Rick Riordan, or no,
Frank Herbert does a pretty damn good job with it.
Or Paolini with the Aragon series. I feel like that was one where you could tell he had thought through, he had created all the languages, had really thought through all these things. And that comes through so much and it's so much work on the back end to put all that effort into.
All right.
But
it comes me to.
I want you to sentences, Eytan. I'm missing half of Nick's.
No, I did this once with a relative of mine, and he loved that series of books. And I pointed out something to him. And once I pointed it out to him, he was never able to unsee it again. So if you really like those books and you enjoy them, gay gesund, no problem. I won't say a damn word.
Yiddish for go in peace, by the way.
But if you want to know the thing that I actually pointed out, that basically...
I think I'm going to be too curious now. I've only read those books probably 10 times, 13 times, so I think I'll be fine. I think I've already made up my mind.
Probably already came to this conclusion too. I'm not the only one that did it. You're reading Star Wars. He literally created Star Wars.
Yeah, Star Wars and Lord of the Rings.
First book, Star Wars. Almost entirely Star Wars. Top to bottom, beginning to end, first book, second book.
Now I'm going to have to reread it.
You have the guy who's living with his uncle.
Yeah.
Who's going to be dead soon. Right. Who is a Jedi, a magic dragon rider.
Yeah, you're right. Shit.
However, he meets Obi-Wan Kenobi. Oh, sorry, no, he meets the other old guy who's still a dragon rider, even though he lost his dragon, who's going to tell him what to do. And then what do they have to do? They have to go rescue a
princess
from a
wizard.
Yep, castle, horrible castle, wizard,
yeah.
And then after they rescue the princess, what do they have to do? They have to fight a grand battle where all of a sudden our young Jedi is instrumental in helping defeat the big bad super army, and the rebels get to continue to live. Book 2, what does our great our great dragon rider have to do?
I'm forgetting the order of the books.
He has to go to the Elven City and find the last dragon rider teacher. Yoda, sorry, not Yoda, the Dragon Rider teacher.
Fair. Oramus, yeah.
So basically, and hey, more credit to the guy. I wish I had thought of the damn thing. He sold Star Wars to us again.
Yeah. Well, I would take it a million times. Yeah, he did a really good job of it. That's what I'm saying.
But essentially my favorite episode of South Park. And I love South Park. I watched so many episodes of it. To this day, my favorite episode of South Park is one that's called The Simpsons Did It, because it is the absolute truth.
Yeah.
It is when Butters, as Colonel Chaos or General Chaos, I forget what it is, tries to go and destroy the world. And every time he comes up with a way of destroying the world, his General Disorder, his little sidekick, keeps on telling him the Simpsons came up with that one.
Yeah.
Simpsons came up with that one. Simpsons came up. And he can't do anything because the Simpsons already did it. But then at the end, somebody says, look, the Simpsons stole it from the Twilight Zone, and the Twilight Zone stole it from the story. So nobody's ever original, so do what the hell you want.
Yeah, and pretty much all those stories come back to the Bible,
It was a brilliant retelling of the Star Wars story.
The hero's journey.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Absolutely.
By the way, I will, first of all, thank you for the beautiful compliment about world building and character, and all of that stuff. I think one of the big advantages that Eytan and I have as partners and co-authors is that we help each other out in areas that aren't our greatest strengths, but it's then like Eytan is the master world builder. Like he sees it, he walks through it.
I order a pizza while I'm there.
He orders a pizza. He's less interested in the minutia of stuff that goes down in there. He sees the big kind of things. I come from a background in advertising as a copywriter.
It was fun walking through the Empire State Center.
Yeah, for me, dialogue is musical. Building a scene, and putting the wind in the trees, and the air and everything that they smell, all of that stuff. Like that is paramount for me, is getting into the details of a scene, and then further where that scene takes us once all the pieces are in. And I think the combination of those two skill sets allows us to create world as character and characters as character. Yeah.
And that's something I'm curious about then, for how expansive and how much you get into building the worlds, Eytan. Was it tough to write those short stories and have, because I was thinking
no.
one day at a time. It wasn't tough.
One short story was incredibly difficult to write, because it is the best and the worst thing we've ever written.
Yeah,
it is the most horrible story we have ever written. So I actually started writing it, left it alone for like 12 years, got back to it, was able to finish it off in like a week. Then my brother got his hands on it, and he took like 3 years to do it. And I'm willing to bet a part of it was it's just too horrible.
I didn't want
it really was just a horrible, but it's also one of the best things we've ever written.
To write it. Our dad was like, this is a great story. Please don't publish it.
Please don't publish it. It's one of the best things we've ever written, and it is still horrible. I'm sure you know which one we're talking about.
I want to guess Street Level with a Madman.
Street Level with a Madman. But that world was so clear, and the steps to that world was just so shining bright. And the thought of how somebody with the best of intentions, like a Gupta, could end up doing the worst of all things. I couldn't. And every single step, there's nothing that Ben Gurion says individually that's wrong. Every single one of his statements at every single moment is 100% correct. The world doesn't give a crap about us. They'll happily let us die. We've got to save ourselves. Everything's true, but it's still not the right decision.
Still arrive at the end of it with everything being true, feeling sick to your stomach.
Exactly. Your stomach. I think that was my favorite of all the short stories. I zoomed through that book pretty quick, but that was the one where I didn't put that book down.
Oh, that last page.
Oh man,
that last page. It's just
so you know, all of Ben Gurion's mannerisms in the opening scene, the ticks, the tails, all that. Those are everything that Hitler did. So he actually that's just a little inside baseball. He adopted, I did a lot of research on Hitler's tics and his mannerisms and all of that stuff. Yeah. And so I had Ben Gurion take on a lot of his features, not tics, just to kind of show it how it had, negatively influenced him, how he got effectively insane.
But how could he not?
How could he not? Like that,
given what he had to do, and given the dance he had to constantly make. And what do you do?
Like I had goosebumps the whole time reading it. I feel like on my arm.
What you do is you get off a plane after you've been rescued in Palestine by the fucking Nazis, and the first person to greet you at Tempelhof Field is Adolf Hitler, who gives you a big hug.
I know.
What the hell do you do with that? And he is actually overjoyed to see him. Freud was right. Freud told him exactly what to do. He implemented it, and boom! Congratulations, you saved the Jews, but did you?
6 million Jews never die. Well done.
That is
well done.
And I think
won the war. You just gave him the atomic bomb, but hey, good. Okay, there you go, guy.
Oh man, and I feel like that was another piece of it was just the fact that I'd never heard of Ben Gurion until reading that, and then I had to do my own research to get into. But it's just sometimes you read things where you just almost feel bad about yourself for being ignorant of such important things in history. I feel like I felt this way. I listened to
1575.
1575.
Let him finish. I gotta hear what he's saying, Eytan. Let him finish.
All right.
It's all good.
I'm gonna tell you something that's gonna make you feel a lot better. When you're done, I'll tell you something that's gonna make you feel a lot better. 1575.
Beautiful. I felt this way probably the most strongly. I listened to Dan Carlin's Hardcore History, one of the best podcasts. He just goes through, takes certain historical events and does these really long form, incredibly researched things. And he did one on World War I. And I had always, read so much about World War II and all the battles and all this stuff and how interesting it was. And I was so ignorant of what people went through in World War I that to take all this in. I felt like for probably 2 weeks, I was walking around like a zombie, just like, how was I ignorant of that much suffering and that much carnage and that much, just
all of a sudden appeasement makes a lot more sense from the British point of view.
Exactly. It changed so much.
It wasn't just a stupid policy. It was so bad. They've got to know how bad it was. They can't want this any more than we do. So let's just give them that bit that they want. They'll be happy because who the frack wants a war? Oops.
It's wild. It's wild, hey? Like, but it's
all right. But I'm still going to make you feel better. 1575.
I love it.
It is predicted that 1575 was the last basic year in human history where an incredibly intelligent human being could learn everything of human knowledge.
Right.
That was the last year where you could learn the languages you needed to learn all the math that there was effectively known at the time, learn all the geometry, learn all of the engineering, learn all of the medicine, cover basically all literature that you really need to cover in the major languages so that you'll be fine. Now we're talking still a crap ton of knowledge. I mean, the dialectics alone, for frack's sake, you're going to have to learn Mandarin and Latin, but you could do it.
Yeah.
It was conceivable that a human mind, they think, could learn all human knowledge effectively available in 1575, maybe 76. After that, you don't have a chance in hell.
No. Well, that does make me feel a lot better. Oh, that's
there's no chance that by 1600, there's no way in hell anybody could learn everything. You just can't. There's not even if you live 120 years and you have an IQ of 200, you're just not going to be able to do it.
No, it's just physically impossible.
It's physically impossible. You just don't have the time. And now,
now it's hopeless. It's hopeless.
So don't worry about it.
So
basically, what you need to go for is what I call a Wikipedia level of knowledge. So if you want to cover a subject well enough to write a book on it, see what Wikipedia has to say on those general topics, because that's what 98% of the people reading your book are going to do.
Right. Yeah.
And if you have what's in there in your book, you're going to satisfy 98% of the people reading your book, and chances are you're never going to satisfy the 2%. Yeah. Ever.
I think I should have warned you about this up front. Once you get Eytan going on anything, he'll just keep going. So I'm assuming you have a whole bunch of questions you want to get to.
Oh,
so
yeah.
You have permission to just like break in and say, that's nice, but I've got like 30 more questions.
No problem. If we tried to get through all the questions I have, I think I'd have you guys here for about 3 days. So I'm going to have to just take the wins when I can and get it. You guys have already I feel like I've changed the question so much just from what you guys have said, just all this new information. But I do want to get more into Vampire Night and a couple of the other short stories. So maybe I'll just start off. How did you guys get the idea to do an anthology of short stories? Was that something you just guys had a lot of stuff kicking around? And then I'm also curious how you came up with the order too, because I feel like it was very interesting to work through it, and just it almost was a story to itself of winding your way through the stories and then ending on Teach Your Children Well, which is the one that ties into the unincorporated universe. And then to tie back to that was just such a cool way to end it. I'm just curious how you guys got through that process. When did you start? And just tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, we were kind of in the reverse in that we'd written 4 novels and won a Prometheus Award before we ever decided to write a short story.
Right.
But we had some, and we were thinking, maybe we should write some short stories. So we started writing some short stories. And after a while, we had a relationship with Wordfire, which is a small publisher out of Denver, Colorado. Mm-hmm. Colorado Springs, Denver, Colorado. No, more Colorado. It's in the Denver, Colorado Springs area. Mm-hmm. And so they were like, if you want to publish a book. And to be honest, they're the ones who mostly chose the order of the book.
Okay.
Or the stories the stories went in.
They did a good job.
We published it, and it was a fun little thing. Didn't quite have the impact of the unincorporated man, but
it will.
It will. Yeah. We suspect.
So I'll just add to that. When you're writing in the unincorporated universe, it's an orthodox universe. You know, these are the characters. This is the Bible. This is, and we literally put 1 million words into that universe. 1 million words. And so there is a sort of freedom that you get when you can just jump out into other stories.
Yeah.
For the longest time, I told Eytan, I'm not, when he wanted to write with me, I said, I don't want to write anything that isn't hard science fiction, because I love science. Mm-hmm. And I want to be able to, it's more interesting to me as a reader to extrapolate from where we are today, what that's going to look like, because this actually exists. So it's kind of neat to see what the future might actually look like. Right. And I was, in my own way, I didn't, he would come to me with ideas. I'm like, no, because that's not a big, hefty theme like the unincorporated. It's got to be big themes you believe in, not this other stuff. And so he kept chipping away at me. He's like, come on, man, lighten up, let's have some fun, And eventually he broke me down. And so I was like, all right, and we had time in between the novels, so a couple of those things were just, spread your wings a little, try something different. And certainly Confessions of a Vampire Night with the Zombie Wars, which has a funny start because it started as a joke. Eytan and I were determined to become rich. And so we said, I was
so tired of the whole vampire zombie thing. And every convention you went to, vampires and zombies and vampires and zombies, there's for fuck's sake. And I said, you know what it is, I'm just going to write a story called Confessions of a Vampire Night in the Zombie Wars and be done with it.
Yeah. So our challenge, we actually weren't going to write anything.
There's a problem.
The challenge was come up with the stupidest possible title we could come up with that will make us rich. That someone's just going to pull it off the shelf just because of how stupid and how, trope covering the title is.
Right.
So we came up with a whole bunch of names, and then finally we're like, this is great. This covers everything. And then we left it at just the title. Okay, mission accomplished. Now let's go on and talk about some other what if. But then, as usually what happens with us is we're like, well, if it was a story,
right,
what would it be? And the story became very, very interesting. And I was reading a series of books. Eytan, it's killing me because we forgot the author's name. The conservative author who just writes. It would help if I remember the names of his books, but he is a guy. Oh, it's really a pity that I don't know his name.
All right.
Eytan's going to be looking up on the. I read this guy. He's unabashed conservative American.
Yeah.
And he writes with a voice. John Ringo. Okay. He writes with a voice that is so authentic for what he believes in. You look at it and you're like, this guy is afraid of nothing. Because Eytan and I, when we were writing the unincorporated series, certainly Unincorporated Man, we were being very careful about not to piss anybody off. Well, will they accept the religious B story? We've got to make sure that the arguments are right. We want to get the widest group of people, readers. So we were always kind of careful. John Ringo is not careful.
So careful.
He just goes right into it and calls everybody a pussy. He has no fear in writing what he believes. And so for Confessions of a Vampire Knight and the Zombie Wars, I just finished reading a couple of John Ringo books. And I'm like, if we get to be as rude and obnoxious as we want, that's going to be our protagonist. And we had so much fun. This guy he had no fear.
Yeah.
He was just a 400-year-old asshat with a sense of humor.
Yeah.
And it was like one of the most liberating characters that we've ever written for.
I bet.
And then playing a vampire.
Yeah.
Basically was our goalpost.
Well, I definitely have a bunch more questions about Vampire, but I just had to ask one more question on another story. The dialogue in Day by Day, I found, for whatever reason, I mean, I love your guys' dialogue and all the stories and unincorporated, but for some reason, the dialogue in Day by Day, just the relationship between what's his pickle and the baby. Yeah. Oh my God. That had me cracking up the whole time. Like, God, that just
like that was another character who showed up, by the way.
Oh,
Not Alex, the baby.
Oh my
the
God.
Baby just showed up, and we actually talked with a guy who was a neurosurgeon for babies, and we're like, could a baby, if they were in this circumstance, retain knowledge?
He's
like,
not a
maybe the hypothalamus
neurosurgeon.
isn't developed enough or something.
He's a renowned neuro surgeon, not a neurosurgeon for babies.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, John. Yeah, but he somebody that Eytan and I knew from
childhood, long ago. So we were like, but yeah, so what would happen to a baby stuck in 500 years of living? But if that baby happens to meet this person, who every day picks them up, how is that baby going to develop? That's going to be one of the smartest people on planet Earth.
Yeah. Oh, 500-year-old baby.
Yeah.
Constantly exposed to knowledge and constantly exposed to talking in a combination of spittle, Morse code, and sippy cup.
And farts. Yeah, that was just perfect. I loved that. And it was burps. And burps. Yeah. And it was so funny to see you guys stretch, because I had just gone through rereading the Incorporated series. So I kind of, known a little bit of your style and your dialogue style. And then to see the freedom that you got on those, it was so cool to see that other side and to see you guys kind of spread your wings and fly on that a little bit. It was super fun to catch, because it was still that razor sharp dialogue and still very poignant, but also with the fun and the humor. And it was cool to see that you guys could do both. Was that something that you guys always knew that was in your guys' back pocket that you could pull out and you just didn't? I mean, I shouldn't say that, because there's definitely
when we start, we just start and see what happens.
Yeah. Okay. I got you.
And it's the way Eytan and I talk. Like when we dialogue and we what if together, we're essentially converting the way we talk to each other into, different sexes.
We just came up with an idea for a really wacky Hanukkah story.
Oh, yeah?
Yep. Well, no.
You don't want to tell him?
He's got 30 questions, Eytan. We're not going to do a Hanukkah story.
All right. Maybe he'll find it fascinating.
Well, we'll see if we have time to get to, but I've definitely, because my two of my favorite,
I
win. two of my favorite pastimes, books and podcasts, are kind of meeting with you guys. So the Vampire Knight and the Zombie Wars is now being turned into a serialized podcast. Do I have that right?
Correct.
So how did that come about, and how is that going? Because I'm so curious about that, because it's kind of my two worlds colliding.
Dude, it is so fascinating for me and Eytan. Yeah. It's unbelievably fascinating.
Such a learning process.
It came about, typical. It's a connection thing. I have a friend that I went to college with. I see him. He lives in LA. We're not, we bump into each other.
Yeah.
He has a friend who was a podcast producer. This guy, David Markowitz, who's pretty well known in the industry. And so David asked this guy if he knew anybody who was, science fiction authors, because we're starting a new company. And they wanted to base it on science fiction themes, and they wanted the authors to be involved in the story
right.
in the scripting. So he got in touch with us. We sent over Grim Tales of the Brothers Kollin to the company called Echoverse. And they came back to us pretty quickly saying they really liked two stories a lot. One was Day by Day and one was Confessions.
Yeah.
And then we all decided that Confessions made the most sense for now, given everything that was going on. And for your audience who doesn't know what the basic premise is, it's that we have this idea that a vampire every 100 or so years goes to ground. So he puts himself under the ground and goes to sleep for like 30 years to cover all his tracks. Then he wakes up 30 years later and starts fresh on another rampage for however long it takes until he feels like he's boxed himself in, and then he goes underground for another 30 years. This time our vampire protagonist Vic goes under, and when he wakes up, the zombie apocalypse has happened, and now he's well and truly screwed because his food source is pretty much gone.
Yeah.
And so
rapidly approaching extinction.
Rapidly approaching extinction, and that's not good for a vampire. So he's got to make a deal with what used to be his prey. He feeds off of them, but doesn't kill them. But then he uses his vampiric strength to go out and try to find more humans and protect them against zombies. And so it's an unholy alliance of sorts.
Yeah.
Where was I going with all of this?
And it's the redemption of our character, who is an unremitting asshole.
Yeah,
he is. So what happens?
An unremitting asshole. But the question is, if you are forced to be heroic night after night after night, not because you want to be, because literally it's just the only thing you can do.
Circumstance, yeah.
Circumstance forces you to be heroic. Can you avoid at some point eventually just turning into a hero?
Yeah, and it seems he really struggles with that.
I mean, against your instinct, against your very nature.
Yeah.
You're a blood-sucking vampire. That is quite literally, you are quite happy dropping bodies and going through history and leaving no trace. And that is your joy and your bread, butter, and blood. That is exactly what you like.
Yeah.
And you can't do that anymore. You actually got to get to know these people, know their names, and give them a candy bar every once in a while and all that other stupid idiot bullcrap.
So that was an 18-page story, and they said, we want to turn this into an entire season of shows.
Yeah.
And so now,
we've had to learn.
We're like, sure, that'll be no problem. We're writers. How hard can it be? We just knock out, we knock out the dialogue, and we could get these
the outlines.
We can do it in a day.
Yeah. Not so simple.
We did it in a day. We did it wrong in a day.
Many times wrong in a day.
Yeah.
And now, by the way, the producer of this is a guy named Mark Stern, who produced Galactica, Caprica, a couple of other shows Eytan's familiar with I haven't seen. He's a very well-known, he was the head of content for the Sci-Fi Network.
Oh, wow.
And so he's like a stickler for getting your outline right and making sure that, you get, there's a whole bunch of stuff that we just assume we pick up no problem. But it's a different, to write a script is a much different discipline than being an author.
Yeah.
Being an author, you're like, okay, there's no cut to scene. It's like, okay, we're just going to go
when you want, as much as you want to get.
We don't need to give you a transition. We're going to another planet.
Yeah.
Take it or leave it. But in podcasting, you had better very clearly lead your audience to so they understand where you're going and why you're there. Wow. That was hard for us. It seemed easy, but so now we're very prescriptive about, okay, let's make sure we have a scene so they know that we're going to this next place.
Right. We've learned a hell of a lot in the past half year.
Oh yeah. So how's it going now? Have you got your feet under you a little bit? Learned the process a little bit? Is it coming along, or is it still quite a ways away?
Coming along,
like idiots. When we go into these sessions, where when we first started doing it,
let's just say we're no longer super confident going into these sessions.
And they're like, nope. Here's why.
Now we go into these sessions, we're like
a little bit more.
And so now every time we present, we're like, we have no opinion. We're like, we liked it amongst ourselves when we did it, but now we're just going to wait for Mark to talk and see what he says. And it's always really, really
so annoying.
Yeah.
It's so annoyingly spot on.
We wrote something really good. We put our hearts into it. He rips it to shreds. we drag ourselves back to the damn computer and we write something else. And when we write something else, we're like, God damn son of a bitch, it's a hell of a lot better.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
Almost every single time. God damn it, it's a hell of a lot better.
Oh, well, that makes me excited because it's such a, like I said, it's such a ripe world to explore. For something that was just thrown out as a title like that. It's funny how cool of a universe you guys stumbled into by just trying to throw a title out there. It's very cool what it kind of turned into.
You're going to end up writing it. And for all you know, this might end up being the thing we're really known for.
Oh man,
that's awesome. It really is a
very made up just to make fun of a genre.
So do you think this is something that you guys would explore in the future too, of maybe taking some other stories down a podcast road, or is this kind of just something that it's a cool experience and you'd probably go back to more traditional writing afterward?
It's a cool experience. We're doing both. We're right now writing a new novel together, completely new novel. Are you familiar with Isaac Asimov's Caves of Steel, one of his robot novels?
I've heard of Isaac Asimov, but I've never read that one. No.
Isaac Asimov.
By the way, you're gonna play this back one day and feel really bad about, I've heard of Isaac Asimov.
I know.
Just so you know, one day you're gonna look back on it and go, did I really say I've heard of Isaac Asimov?
Guy, isn't he?
By the way, we're old guys, so we get to make fun of you on this. But
I'll take it.
Mark that,
Okay, in 75 years,
where it is.
I heard of the Kollin brothers, but I haven't really...
I'm writing it down now.
Right, I've heard of that Bradbury fellow.
Yeah.
Isaac Asimov wrote love Ray Bradbury. Isaac Asimov wrote one of the great science fiction murder mysteries ever written. And what makes it such a great science fiction murder mystery is it's a murder that could only take place in the science fiction world he created. So if you like murder mysteries, it's a good murder mystery, but it's also unique to the world that he actually created for that mystery to take place in, which is a wonderful blending of mystery and science fiction. Here's not only a murder mystery, but it can only take place in this cool world, which has all these specific science fiction themes, like the robots and the 3 laws of robotics and blah, blah, blah. And well, the robot couldn't have committed the murder because, maybe our hero detective tries to figure out. And it was such a wonderful achievement that I kind of thought, how cool would it be if we combine this world, which I came up with the murder mystery plot my brother came up with, and we turn it into another murder mystery set in a science fiction world where it could only take place in this world, as an homage to Isaac Asimov and what he did.
And is it
Caves of Steel?
Right, and I had read that. Is this a completely new universe?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Oh, totally. Cool.
Eytan came to me with this idea that was so cool. I was like,
so excited.
Man, this is such a great concept.
Yeah.
And then we worked on a plot for it and like what we could do with this world, and that's where the murder mystery came in.
He's not giving himself enough credit. I came up with the world, loved the world, didn't really have a plot for it. I talked with him, and in 10 minutes he actually came up with the plot.
Oh, cool.
For the thing.
Oh.
So yeah, I'm good at world building, but when it comes to plotting, he's the guy that's really just. It was astounding, and it's a brilliant plot. Oh, it's such a good plot.
Thank you.
And the world is so.
Tell them about the world, because
you want to.
I don't know how much. Well, I don't know how much of the. Like the world is. Well, I see what you're saying. Like.
Yeah, we're only about halfway to maybe 2/3 of the way through writing it. We do have a copyrighted, but do you actually want to tell your brand new science fiction concept on a podcast sort of thing?
Well, it's up to you guys. No pressure. I would be more than willing to wait. I like the excitement of seeing it fresh, but I'd also take any tidbits I can get because I'm a curious.
I'd say as excited as we are to talk about it, it probably makes sense not to give too much away. But I'll tell you this. We'll promise you this. It's going to be done in the next few months, I imagine.
Oh wow!
Let's share the title.
Start, we'll give you first dibs on like talking about it and like going deep into it.
Awesome.
When it's in a better place.
Do you like mystery novels?
What's that? Sorry.
Do you like mystery novels?
Yeah. Oh,
he might not be a bad test reader.
Hey, any early copies I can get, I'm all over it.
All right,
the test reader is more along the lines of
you, my friend, since you're clearly not a sociopath.
The test reader is we give the book to test readers to catch things that we just blindingly miss.
Right.
Blindingly miss. I can give you a funny example of this in one of my stories.
Mm-hmm.
Something I wrote on my own, but just to show you how much you can miss something. But first, let us tell you the title of the mystery novel with the science fiction, because the title is really cool. Murder in the 10th Degree.
Oh.
Which will make a hell of a lot of sense once you actually get into the story.
Yeah.
It's
My
like one of those stories
spinning.
where that's an interesting title, but once you read the story, you're like, yeah, that's the only title this book could have had. Like Street Level of the Madman. Why the frack is this thing called Street Level of the Madman? Then when you get to the last page, it's the only damn title you could have given the story.
Yeah.
So cool. To give you an example of how important test readers are, just across the board, I wrote a story where humanity, for some reason, shrinks. And a lot of them shrink to 3 inches or 6 inches. There's a lot that goes on with that. But besides, it sucks being 6 inches tall when, cats and dogs and ferrets and rats and hawks and everything's still around. So you go from the top of the food chain to the bottom pretty much overnight.
Mm-hmm.
One of the advantages you get, though, is that your wounds are healed. If you had type 4 pancreatic cancer, you don't. You are 6 inches tall and you are in perfect shape. If you were bald, you have hair. If your teeth had fallen out, they're all back. If your appendix was gone, it's there and working again, baby. Your tonsils are back in your head. If you were missing an arm or a leg, not anymore. Literally, if you were burned horribly in a fire, you're now once more a 6 inch.
You need to wrap this up fast because he's got 30 questions.
So basically, I wrote this entire book where these people were going ahead and marveling, and they could jump really high relative to their size, and they're cured, and how wonderful it is, and all their scars are gone, and their tattoos are gone, and blah, blah, blah. And one of my test readers said, wouldn't his circumcision be gone? And I'd written an entire novel where these guys are waking up and doing these things and so on, and it never even occurred to me that they would be uncircumcised because I've been circumcised my whole life. It's not that I'm an idiot or anything. I literally just didn't think about it. I could have thought about it anytime I wanted, but of all the things I mentioned that they had back again, that they had regrown again, that were working order again, it never once even occurred to me to write in, oh, they've got their foreskins back. But if you think about it, that's the first thing a guy would notice.
Yeah,
a guy would be, I'm 6 inches tall. Then what the hell is that? So I put those scenes. So I had to go back and put those scenes in there. But that is the value of a test reader.
Was there anything that test?
We have a whole bunch of stories like that where we just didn't catch something, or we just didn't get something, and a test reader did. So we find test readers to be very, very useful. Mm-hmm. So if you want to be a test reader, it would be literally be, what did we get wrong? What did you not understand? What could be made clearer? You're not doing us any favors if you turn into a fanboy and say, this was the greatest thing. No.
Yeah, you want the honest truth. Well, maybe not the best idea to get a Canadian to do that because we don't like to make anybody feel bad. We're a little bit of a sensitive bunch up here. Was there anything that test readers caught in the unincorporated series that you guys remember? Anything that you guys had missed?
This is a very funny story and a perfect softball across the plate. We had never written a sex scene before in our lives. We didn't. We knew that, the protagonist and his love interest would have to do it.
Yeah.
Because we didn't know how to write doing it.
Uh-huh.
So
complicated economics in the far future. No problem.
So I'm like, okay, well, that's no problem. I got this. My then wife. It's so weird for me to get used to saying that. She reads Harlequin romances all the time. Mm-hmm. So I'll just borrow one of her Harlequin romance books and I'll just
pick up a few pointers.
Check out how they blocked it out. We'll do the
same.
Every
once in a while, we read people the original scene we wrote just for the laughs.
Yeah. So we wrote.
If you ever find us at a convention,
Harlequin romance.
If you ever find us at a convention, we can read you the first scene my brother wrote.
Oh boy!
Which apparently
to us, they were like, dude.
No, it needs
way too much information.
How did your ex-wife describe it?
It was like a 3-page sex scene where there was nothing left out to the imagination. Because I was just following.
He grabs his muscular arse and thrusts it into her with even
it was all of it. And people were like, well, it's really well written.
That was our motto.
I don't want to know that about.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, I don't want to know that about your protagonist. Thank you very much.
That's funny.
So that really 3-page sex scene became like, 2 paragraphs.
Mm-hmm.
It was still a cool scene,
Yeah, of course.
Well,
every once in a while, if we're at a convention and somebody comes up and knows enough to ask, we will find a corner and we'll read it to them.
Well, we won't read it to them. We'll let them read it. It's too embarrassing to read.
Yeah, fair enough.
Well, I'm going to hold you guys to that if conventions come back and I get to see you guys in person here at some point. So one of the biggest things, I'd be very remiss if I didn't ask, because this was something the first time I read The Unincorporated Man, I've never looked at VR the same. And that was something that impacted me so deeply. And I thought about it, and that was one of those ones, I think after I read that chapter, I just, I think I had to take a break from the book just to, let my own mind just recuperate and think of all the ramifications because of how real that seems to be. I
will say this. I created most of the world, and most of the world that you read is my mind.
Yeah.
I gave Dani a very bare bones of that VR museum, like almost an outline sketch.
Oh.
So that part is his world building. The VR virtual. I mean, I came up with the VR edicts. I actually thought I wanted my own 3 laws of robotics.
Yeah.
But the VR world, that's his world building, not mine.
Man, that was that scene, or that like chapter, that VR museum
chilling,
piece it was so chilling and chilling again and again on the. It's not just the first time you read it; it's chilling every time you read it. And I feel like that is. I wish there was something for those, maybe not a big reader but it's so important. I wish there was a way that you could give like a little brief synopsis of the story up until that point, and then let someone read just that chapter, just for like. I think the world would be a better place if people could just somehow read that chapter and think deeply on the ramifications that are coming, because that is something that is so realistic of anything in that, of all those things that you guys talked about in the books that were, coming, coming to fruition. I would say that one is the most realistic and the most on our doorstep.
Immersive virtual reality will be the death of civilization.
Yeah. And that's the way it seems. Is that something that, it took me, like I said, 2 weeks just to get my mind right to walk through the world again after realizing that. And now, I'm a huge video game guy. I love all that stuff, but that's the one thing I'm not getting into VR at all. I don't really want to do it. And when people ask me about it, I'm like, I don't even want to have, unless you read, if you'll read this book, I will have this conversation with you. But until you do, it's like those things where you understand the idea, but you guys just articulate it so perfectly that for me to try and do it justice, I'll end up, ruining the point and I won't make the same impact. I feel like people have to read that book to understand what that is. Is that something that you guys still worry about to this day? Is that something that was
we're old, so we'll probably be dead before the full impact hits.
Fair. I'll take that one on.
It would scare the hell out of us.
Yeah. Like, oh man, that was
in our 50s. Honestly, by the time it fully hits, we'll probably be in our 70s. And we won't really care because we'll just be in wheelchairs anyway. So yeah, just give me the goggles. Screw it.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, it's just one of those things. But
if I was in my 20s, yeah, that would be.
It is. Yeah, it's a little scary.
So the answer is yes. We worry about it.
Yeah.
Because there's such a disconnect between. It's like if the disconnect with somebody holding a phone, and that's there's a space between them and the phone. If it is that severe that you can't even get through to them holding a piece of plastic in their hand, what's it going to be like when they're fully immersed?
Yeah.
And that was really the thought experiment. And so if you can see where we're at today and how addictive it is, even without being immersed, you're a goner when it's immersed. And just so when I was working on that, I had very young children. I had 3 kids under 6 years, I think, at that point.
Wow.
So I would look at them and tuck them into bed every night and then go and then write that.
Oh.
Because I wanted whoever read it to feel what I was feeling in looking at them, and knowing that,
Yeah. And you're an adult. Imagine putting a 5-year-old kid into immersive VR. And on the one hand, wow, it could be useful. But on the other hand, it could be an addiction that they are simply incapable of breaking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And why would you? Why would you want to leave a world where you are Superman sleeping with whichever man or woman you want flying through space, visiting other planets, having super great adventures, or you got to wake up and you're basically, 400 pounds and you can't move very well, and your joints ache, and you got all these bills. And
your kids hate you.
Your kids hate you, and
you hate your boss.
Yeah. Oh, wild. And then
somebody says you can live 20 years in misery, or you're only going to survive another 3 months in VR. And guess what? A lot of people would choose.
Yeah,
a whole hell of a lot of people would choose.
Oh, it was so. Yeah, just such a cool concept. Just one of those ones that, like I said, it honestly took me 2 weeks just to wrap my head around it and, fire back up. And then to see in the later books when VR returns, again, not trying to give away too much, the way they use it for learning and stuff, I feel like that was when it really hit me. That's what would get me. That so ran in line with since I was a kid, I used to always fantasize about if I had a thing where I could stop time and just read as many books as I wanted, and then restart and go back into the world. And with the time dilation of it, it's just that temptation alone, take away all the flying around as Superman. That's what would hook me in. I'd be a goner if I knew I could go into VR and in an hour spend 3 weeks reading and learning and listening to podcasts and taking in all this content.
Imagine going in for an hour and coming out speaking perfect Mandarin Chinese.
Yes, like stuff like that. I would be, I when I first read the first book, I thought like, oh, I would hope that I would have this the personal conviction not to fall into those traps and to still hold my values. But then later on here, and that I was like, oh, well, that's probably more. So I don't know if I'd be able to hold myself back with that aspect to it. But it's just
how many times I've told myself I'm going to stop using Facebook.
Yeah, and that's not even fully immersive yet. Hey,
that's not even fully immersive. I don't use it as nearly as much as I used to, but you know what? Try existing in a world without using Facebook at all. It's possible, but it's not particularly easy. They make it so easy to use it. There's so many things there, blah. So many of your friends are on it, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
Even the people that hate Facebook and are screaming for people not to use Facebook are mostly using Facebook to spread that message.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
What the heck are you going to do? But it's also, when VR comes in, guess how much education is going to take place on it?
A lot.
Hell, they're trying to do it now. They're just doing a really poor job because they literally don't know what the hell they're doing. Yeah. You can't really have virtual schools. They're not going to replace classrooms.
Mm-hmm. And
they really won't.
It seems like the only area that's really leaning into it right now is military applications for training and stuff that's doing it right now.
Because
that's usually where
the military wants to already
trauma. People who have who've experienced trauma, like fire burn victims. Mm-hmm. So it's been incredibly successful. For
Dan Huberman.
But when it becomes a generalized process, you'll be unable to not use it.
Yeah, for
because
sure.
There'll be so many courses you have to take.
That's what's scary.
So many things that they.
You were saying Dan Huberman?
He's a researcher, and he uses that a lot in his lab for fear. They have a whole bunch of things that they have fully immersive, like shark experiences, and they study the brain under those stresses and what works through. And it's super interesting stuff, very cutting edge, and just the amount that they're learning about the brain and about consciousness is so cool. And just the more we learn how ignorant we are about consciousness and what it really is. It's very interesting.
Is he the one who did the famous train exercise in VR? Because there's a famous exercise of, it's a thought experiment. Mm-hmm. It's the question, like, if there were 5 people there, but your friend was there and you had to put the train one way or
another. Flip the switch. Yeah.
Oh, you're talking about the trolley experiment.
The trolley experiment. So they did the trolley experiment.
That was actually developed in 1967 by, what was her name?
Eytan. They did it in VR. And
cool.
Everything changed once they did it in VR.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that was Dan Huberman.
You see your friends, and you hear the train, and you're on the bridge, and then they monitored, and it was really fascinating, the difference of it just being a thought experiment versus a VR thought experiment.
Yeah. Oh man, that's so interesting. And then another thing I was curious about is the female characters in mainly the unincorporated series, but just so much strong, incredible female characters. And I was wondering, was that something that you guys planned, or was that just how you guys wrote, just to kind of, like you were saying, you put your guys' dialogue in all the characters, and is it more a reflection of that, or was that something that you guys were trying to do?
It's not that we were trying to do it, it's just it seemed logical at the time.
Yeah.
This character, for instance, JD Black.
Yeah. I think she might be my favorite character.
Love JD.
So good.
I can't wait to see what she looks like with the half.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. She's probably too old now, but I always saw Angelina Jolie playing her.
Oh yeah. I kind of had a bit of that too in my own head, and that's always what's so interesting is everybody has their own vision. I remember that being one of the first books that we really got into as kids that we'd read ourselves. My parents would read us, or my mom would read us Harry Potter as kids, and then by book 2 or 3, it was what's that? Sorry. Oh, you got me. Damn it. Man, if you guys knew who my dad was, the fact that I fell for that joke is just an embarrassment. He's going to be just shaking his head at me because that's right up his alley, his type of jokes. But I just found it so funny too when the movie started to come out to see how different it was of your imagination to it. It was my first experience of being really deeply immersed and building those characters in your head, and then to see them up on the screen and have it be a little bit different, and then to grow with the stories after that of you're always kind of having that dichotomy because I started with my own characters in my head and there's still a piece of those left, but then the movies become so part of the story as well. You really love these characters. So then you have a piece of it. Some characters you are the character on the screen, right? Like Harry Potter might be Harry Potter, but Hermione might be still that old Hermione in your head. I just thought that was very interesting. It's probably one of the only times that I got to experience that because now when it happens, either the book comes out or the movie comes out, and usually that's the definitive. Whichever I read first, that's the definitive one in my head. But just that being that young and being able to experience it kind of the first time and not really knowing how to handle it, it kind of made it almost where it was you have both, and it was kind of a cool experience. I don't know. I hadn't even thought about that till just now.
There's a funny story about JD though. We're probably going to give away little spoilers, but only for the first third of the book.
Fair enough.
First quarter of the whole series. But there was so when we were writing, and in book 2, it's finally revealed who this officer is, who has saved the Outer Alliance, Ceres, went from being a third officer to the captain, did a brilliant thing, blah, blah, blah. And when it turns out that it's JD Black, my brother's like, that's really cool. I really like that. That was great. But didn't we kill her in the first book? And we had. But I went back and I changed it.
Okay. I was going to say, I was thinking.
She was in my head as a possible character. So I simply changed it from she absolutely died to the elevator door closed. And we don't know what happens to her after that.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Because there was something in the back of my head that was like, don't kill this one off. And sometimes you just get that instinct.
Yeah. And that was,
to answer your question, again, this is the world telling us what to do, not the characters.
Right.
No men could handle that situation.
No.
The men had brought it up to the war. And at the point where it all went to hell in a handbasket, there's no way their way of dealing with it was going to solve anything.
Mm-hmm.
And it felt
I'm not sure it's a male-female issue.
Kind of step in and
I'm not sure it's a male-female issue so much as it was a Justin issue. Justin was capable of inspiring the war, of leading the war, but he fundamentally wasn't capable of winning it.
Yes, which is such a cool dynamic to even think about it.
And the person that came in afterwards, she was.
Yeah, and she might be the only person capable of winning it.
She might have been the only person capable because she was the only person capable of melding both worlds together.
Yes. Yeah.
Most other people didn't even recognize that world was there. So she really did become the linchpin. But she was a completely different character from the one we had before. You have books 1 and 2 with this as your heroic model.
Yeah.
And then in book 3 and 4, you gotta we had so many people saying, where the hell's Justin? When are you bringing him back?
JD.
And how scary was that to make that decision? Because that was my thought of just how effing ballsy is that to take this character that you love so much. Just
we loved him. I hated writing that scene.
We have not been forgiven.
I hated writing that scene. As I was typing it out, I was like, no.
Yeah. Oh man, but it worked out so well.
Stephen King said very clearly, kill your darlings.
Yeah.
And when you kill your darlings, you haven't actually developed them properly enough. Mm-hmm. And the cool thing is, once you do that, nobody's safe. Every day you turn, you're like,
yeah.
And that's what I enjoyed so much is I find some books it's a tightrope that you walk, right? You have to be willing to take those risks, but then sometimes the George R. R. Martins of the world, they lean into that a little bit heavy, and then sometimes it doesn't. It doesn't.
Red wedding.
Yeah. It almost feels like you're doing it just for the sake of killing somebody off. Whereas I feel like when that happened, it opened the door. Okay, nobody's safe, but you didn't abuse it, and you let the characters that needed to have more time to develop, and any character that did lost, even if it was a character that you loved, they had such a good arc that ended off that it felt complete.
Oh yeah,
it never felt like you were missing time with someone that you should have had, other than maybe the one story that you guys got to expand on in the brothers Kollin short story anthology, which is so cool to me. That just how that all worked out. And I love what you guys did with your characters and always gave them their due and made sure that if they were to leave us, it was going to be in a good way where they were fully flushed out and there wasn't anything left on the bone. And I thought that was just, I think that is a hard thing to do. And you guys really, you navigated it perfectly. And that was just really fun to read.
Thank you.
And I just have a question is, did you guys option the unincorporated series at any point? Is it still yours or is it going to become something different? A few times. Okay.
It's been optioned a few times, but here's the thing. I mean, I live literally in Beverly Hills area.
Yeah.
Eytan lives in California. He was living locally. So we're in the Hollywood. The thing you find out about Hollywood is that a lot of stuff gets optioned. It's very rare that things get made. Mm-hmm. And you think that with all the dreck and all the stuff that's out there, and there's always stuff that seems to be coming out, how is it not made?
Yeah.
We have enough fans who've said to us enough times, how has this not been made? And we scratch our heads and say, I don't know either.
No, honestly,
but I have a feeling that's all going to change this year.
Yeah. Now that I've seen The Expanse, I've got hope. Because I know that there are people out there, there are networks out there willing to actually fund a complex, deeply immersive science fiction world. And The Expanse is exactly that. In fact, to a certain extent, there are elements of The Expanse that are like the unincorporated series.
Right.
That whole war between blah, 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 though they make it a three-way war, but still, and it's a pretty cool concept. And so we know that there are people out there, there are studios out there that are capable of taking the unincorporated man and doing it justice. Mm-hmm. They just haven't gotten around to it yet.
And that's exactly what I was thinking, because I definitely have felt both sides of it. I've been like, how is this not coming out? But then also each year that it doesn't is, okay, now progress is going to be able, because it needs to be done right. It can't just be rushed. It's so expansive and it needs to be done right, that each year that passes, technology advances and people get better and filmmaking advances. And it seems like almost if you would have made it 5 years ago, you couldn't do it justice. And I feel like you probably never could do it justice in the right way. That's kind of just the dynamic of books and film. It's really tough. It's really, really tough to hit that high watermark that you can do with a four books worth of
with a virtual reality underworld.
Exactly. Yeah. Like how
do you do that?
Yeah, you almost need it to be like a TV series or something. They can really take their time.
It would have to be a TV series.
That's kind of what I was thinking. So is that an option too, or is that what? I don't really know what option.
Whoever wants to pay us the most amount of money is what the option is.
There you go.
Penny.
Oh, that's funny. That's a great way to look at it.
Our sense is, by the way, the business model for even the serialized podcast is, get an entire season's worth of shows. For not a lot of money, because it's voice actors. Mm-hmm. They might get a famous voice actor, but usually they work for not a lot of money.
Yeah,
and then sell it as a show. If it becomes popular as a podcast, then they can go to a bigger investor and say, "Hey, look, we got X million viewers, so let's make it into a TV show." And so if that happens, then fingers crossed, then it's like, well, what else have the Kollin brothers done? Oh, well, there's this entire universe called the unincorporated, universe.
Yeah.
So we get closer with everything that we work on, and puts our name out there. But I have no doubt, and I'm very confident that series is going to get made. I just don't know when and by whom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I couldn't agree more. It's just something that has that much to it. It's just a matter of time. It has to be done. If not, there's something criminal going on there, because that is just the world.
They're just waiting for us to die so we can't interfere.
Oh, that's funny. But that's where you see is another. We already mentioned him. Christopher Paolini. That was what happened. Aragon got made into a movie, and he didn't get his say, and he was not very happy with how it turned out. And
It could have been a better movie.
It could have been a better movie, right?
Except for the fact that he cashed the check.
Exactly, yeah.
And now it was a great movie.
And now he just released a science fiction book, To Sleep in a Sea of Stars. I got it right behind me. And actually, in reading that this summer, or this fall, I actually felt like I mean, I've never got to ask him this, but it almost seems like he's read the unincorporated series, because so many of those things that I see some similarities there, and it was just so good. But now he's optioned it as a movie. But he said, like, after that experience with Eragon, the number one thing we said is we have to have, right. Creative so now control. Him and his sister, creative control. And that was just such an important piece.
Or at least creative veto.
Yeah, exactly. So it's one of those things where it was unfortunate what happened with that book and with that movie, because I love the book so much, and it could have been something so special. But now that lesson's been learned, and now going forward, you can see. I mean, same thing with Percy Jackson with Rick Riordan. First movie wasn't very good, but now it's having a redemption. Disney's now picked it up, and I think they're doing a TV series on Disney Plus with that whole expanded universe. And it's cool to see that, even though it happened and it wasn't what it was going to be, that isn't the be all end all. That doesn't mean it can't be reborn and tried again. But it's interesting.
Don't get me started on.
Hey, but they're going to do Firefly again.
Hey, there you go. Restarted by popular demand.
We actually wrote a Firefly script. Well, not a script. We actually wrote a Firefly script synopsis.
Oh,
with a lot of dialogue written in. It was a hell of a lot of fun.
Yeah. I bet.
Oh my God.
Are you a Firefly fan?
I've seen, I think, the first 3 episodes of it. I don't know what happened during university. I just heard
this
so much.
This interview is over.
I had heard so much about it that I gave it the first couple. I definitely will. I promise you guys, by the end of this winter, I'll have watched it.
All right.
That and Isaac Asimov. That's the 2 things on my list. I gotta do, or I'll never be able to show my face.
Quote of the day. I've heard of him.
Here's the spiel.
It's
on Audible. It's on Audible, so it's not a problem. You can listen to it whenever you want.
Fair enough. And then I noticed something just in research, you guys. A thing called Wattpad.
Wattpad.
Yeah.
Wattpad.
Could you guys explain to me a little bit of that? I just saw it in passing, and it seemed like a cool idea, but I didn't really know what the full.
Well, Wattpad is this thing where you can actually put stories if you want on it, and anyone can basically just put their fan fiction or whatever they happen to be writing, and if other people want to read it, cool, great.
And have you guys been?
More than that, it's much more of a user engagement. It's like a mashup of Charles Dickens and user engagement. So, you put in, bite-sized chapters every week, or whenever you want, and bite-size is like 2,500 words or less. And you can do however much you want, but they just give you recommendations. And then you kind of open it up to the fan base. They can like highlight a section and go, why did you do that here? I think she would have said this. In other words, you're actually writing and working with your readers, 1 chapter at a time.
Cool. Like crowdsourcing.
Trick them into engagement, or not trick them, but you can leave at the end of every chapter, like, what did you guys think of the da-da-da? Would you have, the first 5 people to answer will get a prize. Like, so it was an experiment in trying to write with an audience and kind of grow your audience. It wasn't a particularly successful one for us.
Oh, okay.
We have written that book because we had been asked to by we had been picked up by a big agency, ICM. And while they were trying to sell our stories in, the guy who was the head of their book to film division said, hey, I want you guys to write a Harry Potter using chemistry instead of magic. And we're like, okay, sure, you're trying to sell our books. We'll write another novel, like idiots. And it turns out we didn't bother reading YA. We don't know how YA works. We just wrote a novel. And so we got a lot wrong in terms of what the...
we wrote a steampunk novel, not a YA novel.
Yeah, we wrote a steampunk novel that happened to have young characters in it, but not a YA novel.
Right.
So because we weren't getting any traction from the YA people that we were connected to, who were all saying, this is not a YA novel and you've broken all the rules and thank you very much. We're like, well, okay, well, screw it. We'll go put it out on.
I'm convinced it'll actually be one of our most successful books once people realize, oh, these are the new rules. At least that's what I'm hoping.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I really like the book, actually. I think it's, it's a fun little steampunk adventure. It's not a YA novel. Wattpad was an interesting way of trying to get it out there to see if we could pick up an audience for it, separate from, all the no's we were getting. And the answer is no, we can't. Certainly not in that platform. That doesn't mean it's, it wouldn't ever get made, because it actually is a fun book.
I suspect that once we're successful in one or two other things, somebody will come along, pick it up, and will be shocked at how well it does.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, maybe I'll have to get my hands on a copy and give it a read myself. I could.
It's free. All you have to do is go to Wattpad and read it.
Oh, well, perfect. Maybe that'll, what I'll be doing after,
we have the whole book
after
there,
this interview.
After a while.
The book is there.
Oh. Yeah, give it a shot. Tell us what you think.
Hey, I sure will. I will. So I definitely have more questions, but almost more. Some of these aren't even questions; they're just such cool ideas that came from that bigger world that were just so interesting to me that I feel like aren't too far away. That it almost seems silly once I read them in your books. Like, how are we not doing this right now? Like, one of them was the ad permeability, like where you could choose how much ads you want to let in for you give up these certain things or target them to you of what benefits you. And it's just something that seems so obvious that it blows my mind that we're not doing it now.
And the Brave browser actually has elements of that already.
The what, sorry?
Minds and the Brave browser already has elements of that already.
Yeah.
They will pay you cryptocurrency, very, 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 very tiny amounts of it.
Yeah, just a little bit.
If you bother to watch some ads.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's interesting.
Or
but
if you allow advertising in on your account, you will get paid for your time.
Yeah. And I know this isn't one that's maybe around the corner, but just another cool idea I had, or that you guys had, not that I had, was just around in the unincorporated universe, like you guys had said, the government gets 5% of everybody's stocks, no more, no less, but then they don't tax you. And then on top of that, because they don't want the government to grow and to start, just revert back into what the government is now, where it's this big overpowering thing, they have to find public good projects and then sell them off after at a loss or just to make sure they don't make any money. And I just thought, it's so cool how much more problems the incorporation system solves than just the personal development, right? Like you guys, it sounds like the idea came part of trying to help the individual, but then all these other problems just kind of fall into place that it solves as well. How much of those things were planned out before, and how much just as you fleshed out the world and explored more, just putting thoughts of how this world would come together, all the other problems it solved, was that surprising to you guys as well? Just how much that incorporation idea solves?
It was more along the lines of thinking it through once you get there.
Yeah.
So you get to the court system. Justin's about to go to trial.
Mm-hmm.
And you think, okay, how would this system actually deal with the courts? How deal with courts and trials? And that's when we came up with the concept of you as a private citizen can go to a government court. They're perfectly willing to have you go there. Or if you want, you can go to a private court, which will actually offer the services. Because the government's not allowed to offer any service exclusively.
Yes, I love that idea. It's so cool.
Not allowed to offer any, they cannot say we're the only ones that can do this. Private people can go ahead and try to do courts or do trials or deliver the mail. And if the government can do it, so it can offer a baseline service, and that's fine. But and people can go into but people, there's no such thing as, they can't even control the currency.
Mm-hmm.
You're allowed to use whatever darn currency you wish to choose to use. Or people can require you to pay in certain currencies, and then you can choose whether to buy that product or not. But that is completely your choice. There's none of this, you can only pay in dollars.
Yeah.
It wouldn't even occur to them. Or you have to use a government court. Well, what if the government court is corrupt or really slow, or they just keep on making stupid decisions?
Yeah, exactly. And it gives you options. And when you prevent monopolies in that sense and always make sure there's competition, which is really the heart of what capitalism is in its perfect form, right? It never works like that in the real world, unfortunately, but that's what it prevents, all those things where monopolies fail and all that bureaucracy that develops from it. It's kind of the antidote to that in all these different ways. It was so cool to explore. I would imagine it'd be very fun to explore that and just take it the next step further and just, courts, how would it affect this? Oh, like law enforcement, how would it affect it? Just to take to take that system and then just to overlay it over all these different areas of the world. And I'm sure that you guys haven't even gotten to all of them yet. I'm sure if you stayed in that world longer, you'd find even more
elements of that in the real world.
Characters are taking you to all of these places.
Yeah.
They would not be developed if Justin wasn't sued. We would never bothered exploring how the court system would work in an incorporated world, but he did get sued. And so we had to throw him into that system. And we had to
open up a pizza
what that
parlor.
system was, that we threw him into for the reader's sake, for our sake.
Right.
And that's how those things happen.
Yeah.
If Justin had opened up a pizza parlor, we would have gone into the pizza parlor in an incorporated world, sort of thing.
Yeah.
In fact, you did get a bit of that when Justin walked into a bar.
Yeah.
And met his good friend who was drunk. And then all of a sudden, you got this whole introduction of what is it like drinking in a bar in this world.
Yeah. Oh,
and it's not quite what you had seen. There's that moment when Justin, that's another scene my brother actually did a really good job with, where Justin looks at this world and he realizes he's looking at it from a 21st century point of view, not from the present. Right. From the present, he realizes this bar is a dive, even though it doesn't have the immediate characteristics of a dive, because everything's neat, everything's clean, the alcohol quality is good, the servants, the servo robots are there doing their job perfectly well. But he walks in and he gets a sense that this feels like a dive, because the people that are in there are the people you would find in a dive. It doesn't matter how much you make the surroundings nice. And what makes it a dive isn't the fact that it's all crappy and terrible. It's the fact that it's uniformly okay.
Yeah, yeah. And I love those. And I love those.
That little bit there lets you know.
I love. I want to hear how that ends.
I just feel like it seems like that it would be very easy for you guys just to, lean on the dialogue, lean on the things and not totally flesh it out, but just it keeps you grounded in that because you guys did do that work and to make sure, okay, what does a bar look like in this universe? Let's not just sit them down, have biennial bar. You really took us through that. And same with the pawn shop of just, something that how much can a pawn shop change, but just those subtleties that show the richness of the world in all those occasions. I think there was a lot of areas where you guys could have taken an easy way out and just, slapped something together just to make the dial and just progress the scenes. But at every point, you guys really took the heart and soul to really flesh it all out and make it sure that it's those
little changes that.
Yeah, it was so cool.
Well, you remember the movie Demolition Man with Sylvester Stallone and Wesley Snipes?
I don't think I've ever seen it. I'm sorry. I apologize.
You should watch that movie.
I know.
You should watch it because it holds up really well. In fact, it holds up better now than it did when it came out.
Really? You don't say that about many places, but
it holds up better now than it, ironically enough. It's more poignant and more on point now. But there's something in there called the 3 seashells, which is hilarious. And there's whole YouTube videos on what the hell these 3 seashells are. And essentially, it's when Sylvester Stallone, actually, watch the movie. You should watch it. You should see it.
Pretty good.
It's a fantastic, funny, hilarious. Wesley Snipes is one of the best bad guys you're ever going to see.
Yeah,
he loved that role and he inhabited and frankly, it's one of those movies where as good as Sylvester Stallone is, he's playing the hero. Okay, but every scene Wesley Snipes in, he's just so goddamn magnetic. It's just a magnetic, wonderful villain.
I'm just curious with such a special world that you got to build and navigate through. Was there any areas that were a particular favorite of yours, like areas of the universe that when you fleshed them out, it was very enjoyable for you? I'm sure it was enjoyable the whole way through just by nature of what it was. But was there anything that sticks out to you as particularly enjoyable?
Love figuring out how the Outer Alliance kept on winning those battles.
Oh yeah,
because they're going up against an industrial powerhouse. They have to win the battle. They really are the South versus the Union in the Civil War.
Yeah,
they really are Czechoslovakia dealing with Nazi Germany. I mean, how the heck are you going to win?
Yeah,
and you don't have an industrial base. You're literally fighting with mighty equipment and old ships against an empire that can literally produce brand new military equipment in massive amounts.
Yeah.
So for every battle, I had to say, how the hell are they going to win this one? How is Omad going to pull this off? How is JD going to figure that one out?
Yeah.
It's just
this was fun for me to read too, right? Because
I bet
Eytan sees these military things. This is his world, and like I'm reading it, going, "How are they going to get out of it this time?"
Yeah,
Ice ships, damn it.
Yeah.
Of course. You know.
Man, that is so much fun. And that was kind of something I was curious about because, you know, there's going to be a lot of things to go back to pull from historically when you're talking about war. But space war, not as much. You guys are so meticulous in your research and making sure everything's right. What kind of resources did you guys go to figure out, you know, how war would work in space? Because I felt like it seemed so real and so grounded with how things worked and so meticulously researched. But like,
there was a lot of research to go into that. How fast can ships travel?
Right.
When you're actually pulling G's, how fast can you stop? If you clear all debris, if you could somehow manage to clear every bit of debris and you knew that debris was cleared, how fast could you actually travel in a star system with a constantly accelerated fusion drive? And it was shocking. You could reach Pluto in a week. It was like, holy crap.
Yeah.
That
By
was
the way,
amazing.
we get vetted by, first of all, the people who read our
that particular fact we vetted like 3 times because it was really unbelievable.
Yeah.
But
we have really
compound
good
interest.
people.
Constant acceleration is constant acceleration.
Mm-hmm.
Your problem is you got to get that halfway point or you're going to zip right out. But other than that, if you could clear all debris, because if you hit even something the size of a nickel, your ship can be shredded. So you got to really make sure that those areas are clear. But if you can pull that off, you can actually travel. And again, that's only something people would do out of desperation.
Right.
In other words, the United States didn't develop a cell phone system. Why? We didn't need to. We had tons of power lines and telephone lines and poles everywhere and underground, and we even had some fiber optic. So we didn't need a cell system. So we didn't bother developing one because we were so good with what we had. It wasn't as good as a cell system, but it worked well enough and we didn't want to bother changing. Finland developed a cell system. Nokia is a Finnish company, but if you ever look at Finland, it makes sense. Small population, isolated areas, lots of snow and towering, blowing winds of doom. You can't keep phone lines up. It's just not going to work. But you can put up a cell tower.
Right.
That's easy. So, of course, Finland's going to develop that technology because they have to. They can't string for 3 million people power lines across a state the size of California in blizzard conditions. They would go broke trying. So they didn't. Same thing. Up until the war between the Outer Alliance and the Transhuman Federation, the Terran, good Lord, I forgot what we called the other side.
UHF.
UHF, the United Human Federation. Thank you. Derp. There was no need because it didn't matter if you went fast or slow. As long as it came there on a predictable time, you could economically make money off it. So if it took you 7 months to get to Pluto, it took you 7 months to get to Pluto.
Yeah.
That's okay. If it took 7 months for the size to get back, there's nothing particularly urgent. But once that war started, holy crap, the Outer Alliance had to develop technologies and techniques, and they had to develop it fast. And frankly, our model was the South during the American Civil War.
Oh, okay.
They went from zero industrialization, or effectively zero industrialization, to competing with the Union for 3 years.
Yeah.
And they never lost a battle because they didn't have guns or ammunition.
Right.
The South never lost a battle because they didn't have guns or ammunition. They always had enough guns and ammo. They didn't have shoes or clothes or food, but they had the guns and the ammo. Yeah. It was a miracle. They were able to pull that off. They were able to make ironclads. Ironclads good enough to take on anything the North had with no industrial base at first. And they developed one. The Tredegar Armor Works was brilliant, and it just popped up out of nowhere. And frankly, if they had had a little bit more help and the war lasted a little bit longer, if they had been able to get a little bit more food or shoes or get a slightly bigger economy, they might have won. They might have won.
By the way, Nick, there are a lot of Civil War references and anagrams, like Trang is an anagram for Grant.
Oh.
Gedratar.
Gedratar
is
Tredegar.
So there are a lot.
Cool.
Sobolje is a anagram for Goebbels.
Oh.
So we
she was a tragic one too.
Damsa is Smith.
Tim Damsa is Adam Smith.
Adam Smith. So there's a lot of Easter eggs like that. And the short answer to your question about how it all works is it's because we have help.
Yeah.
So So, yes, we figure out stuff on our own, and I love doing especially the scientific research. I'm a total geek on that stuff. But we had some highfalutin, like we had a particle accelerator, scientist.
Yeah.
We have an Oxford physicist.
That always helps.
When our book came up for the Prometheus Award, the Prometheus committee demanded to know how it was we had the temerity to build a space elevator not on the equator. How dare we? And so
everybody knows.
Everybody knows. So we basically
had beyond the equator.
We had the number one material scientist in the world vet and verify our space elevator based on where material sciences would be 300 years from now.
Yeah.
You don't need to put it on the equator at that point.
Now,
I wants to say we have the biggest in the world.
It's cheaper to put it on the equator.
It would be cheaper.
It would be cheaper. It might make more economic sense, but if there's an overriding political or cultural reason, you can do it. And the example that is historically there is the Panama Canal.
Right.
Any idiot in the world should have put the canal in Nicaragua. Anyone in the world could see that it was 10 times easier to build the damn thing in Nicaragua than in Panama.
I didn't know that.
Even though Panama is narrower, you don't got to go up mountains that's fracking tall in Nicaragua. And you got this big, huge lake in the middle of Nicaragua, which is going to cut like 1/3 of your expenses gone. So anybody should have put it in Nicaragua. You're just digging a standard canal. You're not trying to go through malaria-infested death swamp while doing it. But the United States didn't own Nicaragua. We owned Panama. It was ours, lock, stock, and barrel. We could do whatever the hell we wanted with it. Right. Just ask Noriega. So that didn't work out so well for him.
Yeah.
So the United States went ahead for political and reasons. They built a canal in a place where it was not easy to build a canal. It was technically possible, but oh my God, it would have saved so many lives and so much money if we just built the damn thing in Nicaragua.
Yeah.
So that's the example that you can give, but it wouldn't have meant squat without the material science guys saying also, it's actually physically possible.
And by the way, one more quick story at the very end. This happened with like 2 weeks before they hit, go on the printing. Mass production. They found out that we had spun Ceres for Gravity to make it, the capital of the Outer Alliance.
Yeah.
And it turned out that, because Ceres, they had already figured out by then, they hadn't proven it, but it's been proved in the last few years, Ceres had a shell of ice on it that had we spun it,
fast enough to create an internal centrifugal gravity.
Right. Would have been flying off into space.
So we had to create a new form of ice, and so I actually found an ice scientist, and he helped me create a new form of ice that we could prove would stay together.
Basically, nanite-infused Bucky tube ice.
Yeah.
Cool. Oh, that's so interesting. All those steps.
Which was also cool because we found out during the battle when Trang's blowing the living crap out of Ceres, that it's regenerative. So as much as he was blasting it, it was actually doing what nanites always do.
Rebuild.
It was pretty damn frustrating for him.
And that was the three things I was going to bring up of the most impactful to me of the scientific breakthroughs of the AI, VR, and the nanotech. And that was just like the what you could do with those three things is just, pretty much everything else almost dovetails off of those three things, really.
Science.
There's just so
you're gonna love Murder in the 10th Degree.
Oh man, I can't wait. I cannot wait.
You're gonna love it.
You're just gonna love Murder in the 10th Degree. Almost wanted to send him the first 9 chapters just to see what he thinks of it.
Hey, I can keep a good secret. And this is something that I may have, put in myself of my own theme that I, kind of mirrored onto the books, but I'm curious if you guys saw this as well. It was something where I don't even know how to maybe articulate this.
I only have about 10 minutes left.
Well, I'll make this my last question then, and then we can.
No, Dani wants to keep on going. That's fine, but
no problem. It seemed like there was something.
Dani can do another 3 hours easy.
Hey, no problem.
10 minutes.
No problem.
10 minutes. We're good.
Yeah. So there's something that I always thought of. The way we look at intelligence and capability, we've measured it in a bunch of different ways, and it's hard to nail down exactly what combination of all those things makes somebody capable. You have to be smart. You have to be able to bend rules. You have to be able to, follow your gut in certain times, and certain people like JD Black and like Trang, where there was nothing that should have said they should have been who they were. And, one was a lawyer, one was, kind of a war reject.
A failed alcohol distributor.
Yeah, exactly.
Trang's history is exactly Grant's, by the way.
Oh, really? Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Exactly.
Now I'm going to have to read
look at
these
the
again.
description of Trang's face. It's Grant's face.
Oh,
except
man.
he's Chinese.
Down to the mole on the face.
Oh,
Except
man,
he's
that's
Chinese.
so cool.
Yeah.
He's a Chinese Grant, basically.
He's a Chinese Grant. Yeah.
And it was just, I'm trying to formulate this into a question. I started as a statement, but just, is that something that you guys thought of? Because it seemed like there was always a kind of a running theme of trying to look out for that and trying to decipher what that is in those people that makes them special and gives them that kind of right combination of all those things. And with, I think you guys kind of alluded to it a couple times.
Finish. I want to hear the end of the question.
Okay.
It seemed like there was a couple times where you guys alluded to it with, I think it might have been Sandra talking about how she wanted to study JD Black and maybe trying to try and decipher what it was. And I just thought it's so funny that 300 years in the future with all these technological advancements, that mystery of what makes a successful human tick of all those things, it's still a mystery. And I just,
I want to hear what he's saying.
You have the best ships, the best armor, the best everything. And if it's led by an idiot, you're doomed.
It all goes to shit. Yeah, exactly. And I just was curious if that was something that mystery itself was something that you guys had built in as a theme, or is that something that I'm just kind of putting onto it?
No, that theme is actually very appropriate. One of the great advantages the Outer Alliance had was it rapidly found people that could fight quickly and got them into positions where they could actually do the fighting.
Yes.
Whereas because of the political and economic structure of the UHF, they had to put idiot after idiot after idiot in charge
because of who they were and their name,
how they were and who they were and how their society worked.
Yeah,
and their society was a corporate society where you basically showed difference to the people that made it onto the board and blah blah blah. So when the war started, naturally we got to get our admirals and our captains out of this. And Trang basically was given the smallest ship on the first fleet, basically because he had the experience and they wanted a couple of people there, but really all the important jobs went to blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And this was basically the Civil War too. It wasn't that Lincoln didn't have good generals. It's Lincoln had to go through a whole bunch of crappy generals and just let them die and kill so many people before he could finally find the good ones and get them to where they needed to be.
Right.
And the Civil War is essentially Lincoln getting Grant, Sherman, and Sheridan into positions of authority where they could actually win the damn war.
Wow.
And that was basically, that was it. And once Grant was in fact, the problem Lincoln had with Grant is he gave him the wrong order. And this is where I'm going to just go off for a bit, but Trang, same thing with Trang. Trang knew that he could defeat the Outer Alliance if he constantly kept on fighting them. Battle after battle, not letting go, rock after rock, ship after ship, not giving them a chance to breathe. Because if you give them any chance to breathe, they're going to power backwards, do a double somersault, and screw them in the ass.
Yeah.
And Lee was the exact same way. Lee was a brilliant general, and they had Lee, and they had Forrest, and they had Beauregard, and they had all these pretty darn good, outright amazing Jackson, Johnson. They had all these amazing generals, 2 Johnstons actually. That all these incredible people, but at the end of the day, they couldn't defeat the overwhelming power that was the North. The North could produce army after army and keep on doing it until they found a general that could win. And that was the problem that the Outer Alliance had. JD could win battle after battle after battle, but at some point, Trang's going to be put in charge. And when you were reading the story, how did you feel when Trang was finally put in charge? On one hand, you're like, yay, they finally got the right guy in charge. And then you're like, no, because now the other guys are going to
now they're up against it. Yeah.
How the hell is he going to be the guy?
I kind of like Trang.
Oh, I loved him. He was a great character.
Protect Trang, even though he was on the wrong side.
Yeah.
And we sort of, unfortunately, Gupta ended up taking, I hate that guy. Like, I'm so glad he got this, But Trang, because we knew what we were going to do with him, we had to make him the bad guy, but not so bad that you didn't want to root for him.
Right. And then Zenobia was kind of the in-between of the two, right? Yeah. She had kind of a bit of both, and she had her own character arc where she kind of starts out on the one side and then goes to the other one and then kind of returns back. Oh, Yeah, I could literally talk to you guys all night about
Zenobia Jackson was a fun character.
Oh, there's so many good characters. I feel
an artist who becomes a brilliant. I wish kind of reminds me of Thrawn from Star Wars. I don't mind saying that because I wrote this before Thrawn from Star Wars, but he's also an artist who uses the fact that he's an artist and understands art to defeat his enemies.
Interesting.
To a certain degree, Zenobia was starting to be able to do as well.
Yeah, Zenobia had the scene with the heads in the bag, right?
Yeah.
I love that scene.
Yeah.
It's like, man, you don't want to mess with this.
No, not at all. Especially not right then.
She will extract victory, just like Janet, just like Omad. She will extract victory from the most ruthless and odds against you situations. She will find some way to get that done.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, I can't thank you guys enough for giving me this time just to fanboy out and ask all these questions. Maybe I'll leave everybody with one last question before I let you guys plug everything you want. With all these amazing characters that you guys developed, who's your guys' favorite character? If you have one, I know that's probably like picking children. And then maybe who's the one-off character that was just a little bit smaller but just held a special place for you?
Wow.
I know that's a tough question. I can maybe vamp for a bit if you need some time.
Who's your favorite child?
I know. I shouldn't have done it to you. I had to.
No, it's a great question.
Eric Holke is the most important character to me because he's not a character.
Eytan, so
he's a friend of mine that actually got killed in Iraq.
Oh wow!
So when I wrote that character, it's him. It's my friend. As much as I can remember, I showed it to other friends of mine in case I was getting something wrong or not doing that right, I shared it with his wife. I basically wrote him in there
beautiful.
As a character. And he was just a character, also a one scene character who was just there for one scene. So I could put my friend there and he'll live on the page forever.
That's awesome.
Then he came back.
Beautiful.
And then he came back. Yeah. And then he came back. But I always wrote him, what would Eric, it wasn't, what am I doing in this situation? What would Eric do in this situation? So yeah, he is my favorite character in that. Anybody that reads this, maybe they'll read it 200 years from now, and Eric will be alive for a bit in someone's imagination.
That's so beautiful. I love that. That's awesome.
I'd say my favorite character is
top that.
No, I can't.
Top the heartfelt friend in that.
No. Well, I have a dead friend in the series too, but not the same way. Yeah. Night Lawson was my Spanish teacher.
He actually turned out to be a very interesting character too.
She turned out to be a really interesting character, and she was a beautiful, really kind woman. But no, my favorite character is Vic from Confessions of a Vampire Knight in the Zombie Wars.
Oh yeah.
Only because I've never been able to feel so expressive in a voice as I have in talking through Vic.
Yeah.
I there's a lot of characters, and I put myself in a lot of heads, and Eytan and I share those characters. Mm-hmm. That's what's kind of fun about our worlds.
Yeah.
But I've never ever felt as free flowing in conversation to just sort of to step into a character like Vic. So he holds a special place in my heart for that.
Oh, awesome.
He is sort of the ultimate how can I put this? Charming narcissist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can see the ultimate charming narcissist.
Yeah. Oh man, those are both such great answers. I'm glad I put you guys on the spot and asked it now.
And now you said for the small characters that hold a place in our heart.
Yeah.
Was that the second part?
Yeah.
You brought it up. I'd forgotten how much I loved that character, but in Day by Day, the baby.
The baby.
Yeah.
Love that
baby is.
To be able to have
that one's gonna have to be
really
CGI to be done properly,
without any words. That's amazing.
Oh,
so
that's cool.
What I love about him.
And yet, because oh darn it, I just knew her name a second ago.
I don't even remember her name.
Not her name. The baby. What's called the baby? No, Alistair. Because Alistair is talking with the baby, you get the whole conversation.
Yeah,
it's like.
And I love Alistair's character too.
By the way, you'll notice,
but just their back and forth. You're not going to throw acid at us. Whack, burp, or light us on fire. Yes, that was pretty bad. Yeah. No, I'm not going to light you on fire.
If you go back and read that, you'll notice we never once mentioned the sex of the baby.
Oh, yeah. I guess I didn't even think of that.
No idea what sex this baby is. We were very, very careful.
Very careful. It's
never
always
give it away.
Wow, that's so interesting.
There's a reason for it. because for the second book, we want something.
The second story, there's going to be a very funny thing for our good friend Alistair.
Oh, wonderful. Well, I can't wait for that. Well, I can't thank you guys enough. This was such a cool experience for me. This is something I've dreamed of, having authors that I love and books that I love, and be able to ask the questions that have, ate at me over the years of why did this character do this, and where did this come from, and is this a theme, or am I imagining it, and just those types of things. It was so much fun for me. I can't thank you guys enough. Is there anything you guys want to plug? I mean, obviously everyone should be ordering your books, that type of thing.
Well, if I don't do this, my friends, I can hold off on it.
You can go to KollinBrothers.com, KollinBrothers.com, and all our books are there.
Beautiful.
And then just stay tuned, because Confessions of a Vampire Knight is coming out as a serialized podcast. Probably, I would imagine, within a
year, if we're lucky.
Yeah, 6 months to a year. There'll be a lot of spin around that because of who's involved with it. What else?
Oh, can we? Yeah, we can't really say who's potentially involved, can we?
Nope.
Bye.
And everyone should be on the lookout for your guys' new book.
The best vampire ever, and
All right, and also your guys' new book coming out, Murder in the 10th Degree.
Yeah, that one we have to finish writing it. We have to finish proofing it. We have to get it out to readers. Then we have to find someone to buy it.
Getting it sold, but yeah. But
awesome.
it is
Murder in the 10th. It is such it is one of the coolest science fiction worlds I have ever written.
Awesome.
Just in terms of its sheer, what a weird, interesting, what a fascinating solution to one of humanity's biggest problems. Oh well, we do that a lot, don't we?
Well, hearing that, I was going to say, coming from you, that really means something. Oh man.
Well, this solution is just as interesting as Incorporation in terms of.
Well, that's a high bar. I can't wait. Yeah.
Well,
so
there's some magic in this one.
There's some magic. There's some god powers we do to make it function, but
it's worth it.
I'm all for it. I love magic. I love everything. I'm all in. If it's a good story and your guys' kind of dialogue, I'm all in for it. So, thank you guys so much. This was so much fun. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thank you, Nick.
See you guys
later.
Awesome. All right. Hope you guys enjoyed that episode. A couple other things that I just want to bring attention to. If you haven't listened already, go on Netflix and listen to Andrew Schultz, my favorite comedian's new comedy special. It's a little bit different of a comedy special. It's a lot more jokes per minute. It's kind of this new version of Corona comedy that he's come up with, and it's just next level. It was absolute perfection, start to finish. You'll probably have to rewatch it about 13 times just to catch all the jokes. It's absolutely incredible. And then also his appearance on Joe Rogan after the fact is just, they talk about everything I'm trying to talk. Like I say, I try and bring a lot of messages forward on here, and then lots of times I hear the guys that have been podcasting for longer than me just sum it all up. Everything I've been trying to say over like 16 podcasts worth of content, they do it in a couple hours, and it's just so fun for me to watch, and I can't recommend it to anybody else any higher than that. So go check that out if you need something to watch. There's lots of great specials on YouTube as well. If you do like stand-up comedy, Joe List has got a great one, Sam Morrill, Mark Norman, tons of these guys are doing it. Andrew Schultz clearly was one of the first guys to kind of throw it out there and get the party started on that. And that's what a lot of people, and myself included, are kind of following that Schultzy model. And you got to be thankful for the trailblazers that go before you. And I think I am very much so. And then you can see Andrew Schultz is very much still on the tip of the spear, and he is, I don't know. I think he's the GOAT. I think he's past Chappelle. That's just my opinion, and take with that from you will. But yeah, no, definitely check it out on Netflix and then tell me if you disagree or not. I think he's the tippity top when it comes to stand-up comedy, and I can't see what else he's going to bring, because he's still a young guy and he's got a lot of big ideas ahead of him. So keep an eye out. Might as well get on board now instead of in a couple of years when, you look back and man, why did I wait so long to start listening to all this guy's stuff? Flagrant 2 is his podcast, and Brilliant Idiots with Charlemagne the God is also just absolutely incredible. So yeah, hope you enjoyed this episode. I can't wait to bring more high-level guests like this, award-winning specialists in their field, really talented people like these brothers. I hope it wasn't too hard to follow if you hadn't read the books, and I hope it wasn't too deep into me nerding out and fanboying out. But I think I always enjoy the podcast where you can really see the genuine passion for the subject that the person has. And you can probably say a lot of things about this podcast. If a lack of passion is not one of those. So I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope it wasn't too much of an indulgence on my own part, and I hope you guys can get something out of it as well. But yeah, like I said, I hope you guys have a great Christmas. I hope you had a happy Hanukkah. We're all in this together. You know, I know it doesn't seem that way sometimes, but try as best as you can to walk through the world with compassion and love, and we'll all be better off for it. So, all right, I'll see you guys next week.